have they done a strategic plan, and how are they going to put that strategic plan into place on a year over year business plan? And every single person with every level, whatever their level of strengths looks like, has a place in an organization. Some are just at different levels than others.
What do you think, Sue? Man, I mean, there's a lot when you actually think about the basics of
There
prioritization, right?
because usually you just look at, again, a stage one contractor, thumbs up, thumbs down. Yeah, it starts to get much more complex.
So we're there, and with that information, now the P.I.C. starts to make a little bit more sense. Like, force rank these things so that everything doesn't fall into pie. Force rank these across both axes, right? Force rank them down return and force rank them across execution, so you have an even distribution curve. You might not like what ends up in the kill category.
Building projects requires technical expertise and resources. Building a construction business is about developing and aligning those capabilities with customers. We exist to help contractors build stronger businesses for the next generation. From startup to sustainability, contractors grow through 6 distinct stages. Each stage of growth requires a different leadership focus, strategies, systems, and structure. Our goal is to broadly share information that helps contractors navigate each stage. Any resources discussed are available on our website at dbmteam.com.
All right, so here we are again. We're going to hit how to identify and prioritize improvements. Probably the hardest thing to do as a contractor continues to scale, and it looks different at every stage of development, requires very, very different skills from the CEO through the leadership team. So this is going to be a pretty fun one. You ready to have fun?
I am. Let's go.
All right. So the basics on this one is that there's never ever going to be enough resources to fix every problem, chase down every opportunity within the company. And this is a really big problem you have going from managing projects to managing at the business level. And so I'm probably just speaking from experience here, but this is something we see repeated over and over. I know I ran through this. Is you can't punch. The skills may be great running, say, a project, like being able to punch list everything and not miss any details. You just can't do that when you're running a business. You can't punch list it. You can't ramp up and down your manpower out on the project. You can't just call and go get an extra 20 people or something for a couple weeks, and you can't even get a couple 2 or 3 people to come on and do something for a few weeks. Your overhead is a much more stable resource. And you really can't subcontract out the work like you can on a project, though. Obviously, like, as there's some consultants that do a good job of trying to say, yes, you can, and let us go do it. In certain specific cases, that's a really smart move. In other cases, it ends catastrophically, poorly, and we've been through both of those scenarios and everything. So we obviously advise using consultants super, super cautiously, as funny as that might sound. So that's kind of where we're going to start and where we're going to get to today. So we've covered, just to kind of go back, we covered what stages of growth, of contractor growth, and that looks different from starting up through sustainability. So that was 01. 02 was contractor business model, and just what that starts to look like at all kinds of different stages, from when you're starting up, and it's pretty much just get work and do work, and then as you start to go build the business, you're building more and more robust systems on everything from strategy to succession selection to the talent value stream. And then we dove a lot deeper into the talent value stream, because that's right. Well, people are always, I would say, that hasn't changed throughout history, that people have always been the driver of a construction business, or a business that has the same dynamics of construction. What's different today is that we have a massive shortage in the industry, and we also have some demographic trends that are working against we're working against the people that have the most experience. It really truly is an age thing, and that's something actually. So I want to. Maybe that's perfect introduction for what you're working on in your PhD here. So let's pause for that for a second, and then we'll get on to the rest
we'll
of this.
take our little intermission here. It's funny because I came into the industry with my technical degree, and then 25 years in, decided that it was probably the right thing to do is go back and get an organizational psychology degree, because just like you said, it's all about the people. It's all about how those people work inside the organizations. And then looked at it a little further and said, you know what, I'm into advancing education. What the heck? So went ahead and I'm in the midst of a dissertation, and my research project is all about the perceptions of the leaders in the construction industry and how they perceive those pre-retirement transition planning opportunities and what that might mean for their organization, both in sustainability where they are and scalability to where they want to go. And really, it's the fancy way of saying, pre-retirement isn't all about the people inside the organization just being ready to retire financially, but it's kind of twofold, and it's about the people being ready to retire both financially and what can they continue to bring to the organization as they kind of roll out of the organization. How do we keep those mentorship opportunities? How do we keep that knowledge inside for additional knowledge transfer? What does that kind of beyond succession look like, and how can we keep people at the end of the funnel longer, so that when the beginning of the funnel is smaller, how can we keep them at the end? Because that's where the 30 years of experience comes out in decisions just being made that much quicker, that much faster. So it's about the person seeing that, and about the organization, and does the organization see the value in that, or frankly, as I'm finding out in the construction industry, are we even paying attention to that? So I've done a few interviews, and most people, when I ask them about this, I get the, well, that's not a bad idea. So there's not a lot of talk about it yet, but it really is about how we can keep that knowledge inside longer on the outgoing side, if we can't get it on the front end of that funnel.
Yeah, that's the tail end of the talent value stream, really, right?
Yep.
The offboarding of talent, of going, okay, you've put in your years, and now how do we very seamlessly transition you to the retirement masterpiece? That's essentially end of the talent value
Yep.
stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was three that we covered that. And the reason we're going through all this is because these are all foundational. What you're doing when you're growing a contracting business is you're figuring out, where are my bottlenecks within this? This is all of the internal stuff that happens within a contractor as it grows. And they happen in every contractor. It's just, it looks a lot different at stage 1 when you've got 5 employees and versus stage 6 when you have 1,500 employees. So then we talk through effective role transitions, because that's a big part of the talent value stream. Is you're bringing people in, and then whether you're bringing them in as an apprentice and they're moving up through the craft and the field ops level, or you're bringing them in through business management. You're bringing them out and starting as a cost engineer and then bringing them up through that track. Just how do you effectively navigate those role transitions while they're inside the business, and ultimately when they go leave the business? And there's all kinds of reasons why they might leave. So those were the 4 foundational pieces. This is really about how to identify, because back to the main thing, you're never going to have enough resources to fill all the holes that you're going to have within your organization. If you truly do, and you think you've seen all the holes, give us a call. We want to come study you. We want to find out how that's happening. But and saying that tongue in cheek, that's never ever going to be the case. There's always going to be more opportunities, more problems to solve, improvements to make internally than you're going to have resources for. So that's what we're talking through today. So currently, we're only designing this to give an overview of some of the different key areas, and these are things that just as you grow, they become more systematic. You have more people that have mastery. So you just have more people that have an understanding of what it is, more people that are competent in doing it, and more people that have true mastery of being able to do it, and do it very, very quickly. That's truly the biggest thing that changes. So our hope is, over the next, I don't know, however long it takes us to get through this, that we give you some vocabulary and some tools that you can use and take away. And again, may not be applicable depending on which stage of growth you're at, where you're at in your career, things like that. But there will be something here that's applicable. And this is probably the biggest thing that you do as a leader, is decide how to allocate your resources towards these types of improvements and opportunities. The resource that we'll leave you with is a group exercise that about how you can kind of pick SMART, and P.I.C. is an acronym and SMART's an acronym. We'll dive into that. These are not things that are invented by us. These are things that have been tools that have been proven over time to work really, really well. We're going to give you some examples that are very applicable to a contractor of how to use that. So with that, anything to add to that, Sue, or should we just dive in?
I think we just dive in.
Okay. So let's go to the basic math of prioritization. Like this is one, if the math doesn't work, just don't do it. So this is really, really simple. There's an estimated return that you either gained, an estimated return. It might be an opportunity for chasing a project. It might be something that you saved by improving a process by buying a piece of software. You have to multiply that quite simply by the probability of success. Nothing is 100% guaranteed. Obviously, you don't want to do these highly, highly risky things all the time. If it's only got a 10% probability, the math probably won't work. But you want to really as accurately as you can estimate the success probability. And to do that pragmatically, not from the direction of trying to sell the idea, right? I mean, it should be both a sales process. Let's assume that if you brought up the idea, we're working on the sales process. This is now pragmatically looking at and saying, okay, what are all the variables, and what's our true probability of success? And some of the best ways you can figure it out, like I ran this morning. I'm not very good at running. The very best way to predict my running time and pace this morning was what was my running time last week. So quite honestly, I mean, look at yourself. Like if it's a software implementation and you think that's going to solve problems, take a look at the software that you currently have and ask yourself, how long did it really take you to go through there and get the thing implemented and fully adopted by 85, 90% of your people using it consistently? If it was a new process, not software related or something, if it was a production process in the field or standardization of something in the field, again, just ask yourself. It's just a number. It's just like my running number. I'm not proud of it. I'm not going to share it, but if you call me, I'll tell you. And then you kind of divide that by what's our estimated cost to mitigate or capture this. It's just like doing a business level estimate thing. And then you're just kind of looking at it over what period of time. Typical contractor has a return on their capital of anywhere between 30 and 40% for kind of average benchmarks, depending on what type of contractor you are. If it has an estimated return better than that, it's a really good use of your capital. If it has an estimated return worse than that, it's probably a poor use of your capital. But again, you have to look at it over what period of time, because some bigger strategic decisions that we're going to be talking about later on may not pay off for several years. So it's super important to look over what period of time. So that's the basics. I think we're done here, right, Sue?
The only thing I'd add is that you can actually use this as well when you're talking about shifting roles, right, or shifting responsibilities from one job role to another job role, right? What are you going to save or gain by that? And really the biggest hurdle is what's the estimated success probability, because that's a change in behavior for all people, right? But it can be used with people as well when you're changing job roles or moving those tasks around. So it applies to virtually everything that we do.
Yeah, and I wish I could say that it was that simple and this was the end of prioritization. And once you learn this simple formula, calculated in percentages, calculated in dollars, saving 70% on $100 is not really that big of a deal. And unless you do it 100 times a month or something, but saving 30% on $10 million is huge. So it's like, just do the math in both sides. Look at the return in percentages and the return in dollars over a period of time. And this is the first level of how you prioritize it. So I want to throw out an example of this that is just recent from the last couple of weeks. So, which is really cool. So we have a contractor. They're at stage 4, so around 150 total head count. So they're at stage 4 based on a head count level. Good solid contractor, good reputation, and they had 3 opportunities for projects that were pretty, like what we would call a major pursuit. They're projects that make up more than 25% of their revenue. So I think any project that has that criteria deserves some extra scrutiny. So they had 3 that they were pursuing. Pretty cool that they got to the table on it. They ended up winning one. Great, it had good returns on it and everything. And then they really wanted to go take a look at, okay, how do we calculate whether we should go after the second one or not? And the second one they got shortlisted on. It would have been their job to turn down. And what they were looking for was like, what's the math? What's the math? Which there is math to it, right? Then so there was a math of like, what's the return? What's the risk that's in the estimate? How confident are we in the estimate? What's the what's the risk? What are the unknown risks that we don't know? Like after we've covered all of that, and so there is definitely some math to it. But there was also, when we kind of sat down and went through it, there was about 30 other questions that really needed to go into a solid go no go process. And they just didn't have that robustness in their sales, their business development, their estimating systems at this time. They need to go get that built in, so, to navigate to stage 5. And they had tried to navigate to stage 5 just based on growth, but that you can't. But this is a perfect example. You cannot make that reach up to a stage of growth if you don't have the right foundation in place, and it cost them a whole lot. It cost them a lot of money, and I just saw Travelers Construction Surety release some stats from their end. 60% of contractor failures are due to a single catastrophic project. Yep. So the making money in construction's not that hard. Hanging on to it and doing it consistently is really, really hard. So it's like betting. So anyways, this is the simple part. Now it gets much more complex after this, because people get involved. So people and choices get involved, right? So this is kind of the needs to do, can do, will do, type of Venn diagram that you got to look at. And the needs to do is what are your priorities? So you've got to figure that out. Like, that's the objective, very objective. There is some math, and we're going to walk through that. Probably the first half of this is probably all identifying what needs to be done, and you will also see that capability grows over time to be able to identify those and prioritize those really quickly. Fantastic. If you had unlimited resources, that would be easy. Just do them all. But you don't. So then you're kind of can do, what's your capabilities and your capacity. You got to really be objective and look at that. Not one of our team members, Courtney, it's what is it? Not what you hope it is, but what it actually is.
Yeah.
And so
the truth is the truth, no matter what you want it to be.
Yeah, the truth is the truth, no matter what you want it to be. And so again, capabilities being, what is your demonstrated capabilities? Like, I have a demonstrated capability that I can run in, and I did it this morning. But it's because last week was a best predictor of this week. And then, oh, by the way, there's the will do part of it. There's your desire and discipline aspect of it, and you would think, if you're the leader, this is this is actually studied psychologically in organizational design and psychology, that there's this appearance that as you go higher up on the ladder, you have more and more control. No, you have more and more accountability. You have diminishing levels of control. So you have to get the team really engaged around what is their desire, what do they want to do, right people in the right spots and things like that. And so you can't just go up to the corner office. I wish it were that easy. So you got to really work through all of these together, and that's what we're giving you a lot of tools with today to talk through these. So I'm super interested. So you had 3 decades of figuring this out, or 2.5 decades of figuring this out in leadership, and then you went after your psychology or master's in organizational psychology. So this probably really resonates with you, yeah?
Well, and it's funny because in organizational psychology, you see this in action, right? You can see as people move up, just like you said, there's less control, but more accountability, and you have layers of people who are managing layers of people. And in the organizational psychology world, it's very funny how there's all of a sudden all the terms for that, right? That managers at different levels, how they manage, what the type of management they're using, and really how it gets to be, frankly, the higher up you get, the more of a servant leadership type style you almost have to do, because that lack of control, the control's just gone. You are trusting everybody else to do what they are supposed to do. So, yep, the longer you're around an organization, the more the more you see it, and certainly the higher up you get, the more you feel it.
Right. It's all about the people, and so we will have a lot of discussions on that. But getting to the needs to do, if you don't have absolute clarity on that, then you're really just making a whole lot of really bad decisions. It's kind of like the estimate example. If you're not super confident in the cost and the quantities to go build the project, based on the known conditions and schedule and plans and specs, then you can't really do a cost benefit analysis on, is this good, because you're talking about gross margin numbers that aren't even truly accurate.
Yeah.
So, the needs to do, I guess if you're paying attention to the next part of this, get really deep on this. This is just straight math and logic and things like that. This is all right brain stuff. We're going to run through this quick exercise, and we're going to talk through the answers and everything. This is one that when we run through it with groups, with teams, anywhere from 5 to 25 people in a room or something like that, and start to ask what their answers are and where they would prioritize things and how they would think about the improvements and how to prioritize improvements. There's usually, 2 to 3, people in that room that will get, there is one right answer. There's a lot of very valid answers. There is one just, kind of right answer that's here. And so most of the time that's kind of what the range is. So there'll be maybe, 5% or so of the people will see that. That's what you're looking for. So we're just going to talk through this. And by the way, nobody should ever get this wrong. And again, and we'll have to come up with a different group exercise, I guess, now that we're making this totally public. So pretty simple. Production flows sequentially, A through F, through the business. Business is profitable. Your mission is to keep it growing profitably. 2 things that we know about each workstation is the production rate, the kind of per hour capacity, and we know their time on tools, as a percentage, which is kind of a proxy for efficiency. You can make an argument to say, Sue works faster than David, this and that, but when you really look at field productivity, the very first starting point, the biggest loss of productivity is if David or Sue if we aren't working because we don't have material or information or what have you. So time on tools is a really good proxy for efficiency. So I know you love this exercise. Anything else you want to bring up before we kind of go through what the numbers are and start walking through the answers?
No, it's just, it's very fun to watch this exercise play out in a couple of ways. One is, again, just visually like this. Another is if you've got a team that maybe is having a I don't know, an identity crisis, and you want to walk through it together. This is also great in person with, a pile of Legos. But it serves a lot of purposes when we do this in person and as an exercise.
So the and this is the basics. This is where it starts to see where your bottlenecks and where your constraints are in the organization, and it doesn't get any simpler than this. So just know that it's interesting to watch, like Sue said, the teams and how they react. So here's what we know: Workstation A, it's got, and you don't have to know what they do. I mean, the icons are just there; they're just icons, But we know it's where it starts. It's got a production capacity of 12 per 12, so per hour per day. It doesn't really matter what it is. And time on tools, 85%. B, 10, capacity of 10, 98% time on tools. Really, really good. C, 14. So they got quite a bit of throughput capability. They're 75% on tools. D, 9 and 95%. They have a lot of time on tools. E, they have capacity of 11. And they have 80% time on tools, and F, 15 and 78% respectively. So then, this brings us to the question of which workstation would you focus your resources on first for profitable growth, and why? So I don't know, Sue, should we talk through some of the different answers that we've heard before?
Well,
we want to talk about a few of the different answers that we got, and they're all valid. They all sound really good. A few of the answers, and then and then we'll kind of go into the how do you analyze this for bottlenecks and constraints.
So one that I
right.
frequently hear is people taking a look at this and looking at the throughput, looking at the time on materials or time on tools, and usually there's a consensus or some consensus in the room, a few people that get together and say, well, C is the place we should be because we're at a 75% time on tools. And if we could move that up into the 80s or 90s, then suddenly, we've got that much more time on tools, so our efficiency is that much better. So that's where I hear a lot of the ops guys go immediately there. David, I'm sure you've heard other ones as well, but that's the one I hear the
Yeah.
most.
Yeah, C is probably the most common one from the ops people, and yes, because it's well, they ain't busy. So, the other ones that I heard that I think are super valid are start with A. I mean, it all starts in the beginning. Well begun is half done. Just last week spent a lot of time talking about how much time we should spend on the award to start portion of a project. So like for the role that manages the project managers, we were really laying out leader standard work for what they do. And they have a finite amount of time. They work maybe 50 hours a week, and on average, and they've got to deal with project escalations and personnel issues and all those things. So you got to really say, like, what should they do? And a lot of it does come down. A job well begun is half done. So we do hear a lot of start with A, just because well begun is half done. I hear a lot of F, because like make sure that it's right and tight before it goes out to the customer. So that's a super valid answer as well. And then yes, we see some B's thrown in sometimes because of like they're right up there, like there's no more, they're working all the time and they're working really hard. And some E, because E's pretty low as well, as far as the time on tools and as far as the throughput rate. So anyways, those are the answers that we hear. So now let's go talk through, how to really analyze this just from a mathematical standpoint. So definition-wise, a bottleneck is any resource with capacity less than or equal to the demand of the next step in the process. So, from A to B, for instance, A's producer can do 12 and B can do 10. So 10 is a bottleneck, right? Because you'd have 12 marbles going through and they only have the capacity to process 10 of them. And so when you look at it from that standpoint, then B, D, and E are all bottlenecks, and so that's the bottleneck analysis. Now you go through and you say, okay, what's the constraint? A constraint is the bottleneck that absolutely limits the performance, and in that case, it's D, because it's the narrowest of the bottlenecks. So think about it, no different than a plumbing pipe or whatever, a water main. Water's only going to flow through the narrowest point in that water main, the end. So you have to work on relieving it. Now, there's some qualifications to that answer, and the qualifications to that answer would be one of two things. One would be that if, for instance, an improvement, if, for instance, increasing the capacity of D was only going to take 2 months to go do, but improving the capacity of B or E was going to take 3 or 4 months, you would actually start the improvements to B or E sooner than you would start the improvements to D, because you're going to be limiting the flow. And so you have to kind of know this is where it's important to be able to go, okay, I've identified the bottlenecks, I've identified the constraints, I've also identified the improvements, the resources required, and the estimated timelines for those, so you can sequence those optimally. The other one is, this is just like one piece of the flow. So if the external market doesn't have demand for more than 9, then realistically you're better off going to focus to level your flow. That's what the term would be, is level your flow through the whole system and right size your production. It's probably going to be cutting back on some people. It's going to be reassigning and having certain parts of the task done by other areas. So leveling out, for instance, between C and D could just be shifting some task over. And I think that's what you were alluding to earlier, was going, when you're doing the math on this, sometimes just going, okay, these 3 tasks have to be done. Should it be done by the project manager? Should it be done by the project engineer? Should it be done by the, accounting? Should it be done, who should it be done by? a lot of the tasks, when you really line them out, can be done by various people, and you should look at that from both who can do the task the best, but also how does it level out the flow across your organization. So I don't know, that was long-winded response, but Sue, how do you describe this when you're going through it?
Well, the visual part of this whole thing is just like you said, right? It's easy to get to 9 when you take the efficiencies off the bottom, right? When that second row of information of time on tools is gone, it's so much easier to see this. I've actually seen this exercise where they were talking about building a plane, and all of these A through F are different ways or different parts of the plane that have to be put together. And the minute you start assembling that plane, it comes out very clearly that D is your constraint, because you can see everything building up. E and F pretty soon have nothing to do, and everything is landing. It's just coming in the door of D and just sitting there. So again, trying to help see the visualness of this sometimes can help bring that whole team together to see, where they are. And you're right, that whole job role thing, right? If it makes sense to move some tasks from one job role to the other, trying to keep job roles working in their highest skill set, how can you move the rest of those around so you can even out the flow throughout the project, throughout a division, or throughout the whole company? You'll start to see these things level out as well. So the constraints will move, right? The constraint will move from one thing to the next then, as you start to level those out a little bit more.
You made a killer point on both the Lego exercise and the plane manufacturing. And here's where you would see that super clearly with both the Lego exercise or the plane in a manufacturing environment where you had very distinct work cells. You would see the buildup, because you would actually see, you'd go to workstation B and you would look over at the inventory, and there would be a stockpile of excess inventory building up that would continue to go build. And so it becomes very visually easy. I mean, well, I shouldn't say easy. It becomes visually easier to go see that you don't have level flow going through the manufacturing facility or the Lego exercise when you're doing that physically. Where it gets difficult, kind of the business of building, all of the, the building part is physical, and it's harder to see workstations A through F on a construction site because they're constantly moving around. So that makes it a little bit more difficult to go see the flow. But then when you move into the office, we're in the virtual world, and it's very, very hard to go see the ebbs and flows and the bottlenecks. So where it shows up is, somebody going like, I can't get my contracts processed. Contracts isn't moving fast enough. Or, accounting's going, well, I can't get the budget out of the project manager. I can't get this, right? Those are all signs of unlevel flow going through the organization.
Right.
And so, but they're really, really hard to go see, right? They're in, if you looked at my email, you'd see how many unread emails I have. Those are, that's kind of the equivalent of inventory buildup for a white collar job.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's the bottlenecks and constraints part. The task efficiency that Sue alluded to, that's also really, really important. So and we're going to talk about that as we dive in a little bit further as we talk about the continuous improvement cycle. So you always want to be looking for task level efficiency and leveling out the flow and making these small continuous improvements. But it's super important to know that that's something that always has to happen, but that does not guarantee business level outcomes. So, if you have a major bottleneck, a major constraint going on, no matter how efficient all the other workstations are, within the business, you can still have really poor or highly variable business level outcomes. So super important. The same thing at the project level. So anyhow, that's part one. And that just gets a little bit more complicated, but this in itself is quite a bit of a stretch to be able to see that. So now we go further. So if you remember back to the second one that we did, where we talked about kind of the contractor's business model, and you've got, as you're looking at it, you have all these different parts of getting a project from identifying your market strategy to, what do you want to go after, to your prospecting, and turning it into an opportunity, and turning that opportunity into a cost estimate and winning that, and then turning that into a project, starting up the project and working through. So you've got that kind of series of events that go on, and then you've got these supporting functions like purchasing and equipment and HR and accounting and all these things that all have to work together. So each one of those kind of segments has its own bottlenecks and constraints. But then when you look at the whole system working together, it's got one of those that actually becomes the constraint on the system. And we just talked about how incredibly hard that is to see, just saying like the project manager flow. And when it's virtual, this is now backing up and looking at the entire organization. And this is still just looking internal. Incredibly difficult to go identify the constraint, but also the most valuable thing you can do, because all other prioritization is some level of sub-optimization. It won't have impact on the overall business. So I don't know. This is probably the biggest thing we work with contractors on, is helping them really see where do we put our pressure.
Right.
Well,
what I tend to see is, and my background, of course, is heavy civil, but the contractors that have, heavy equipment, you tend to see it at the, in this particular slide, in the M or N, you start to see it at a higher level, especially when you're starting to talk about equipment resources, right? You've got a crane, or you've got 2 or 3 cranes, and those 2 or 3 cranes have to be on all of these jobs. And the jobs, they're looking at their critical path one way, but really the company critical path is where those cranes can actually go. And it's funny because people don't necessarily look at that crane as that whole theory of constraints and how it's being applied, but that's exactly what it is. They just haven't necessarily learned to call it what it is, but they're starting to see it when they know this asset physically cannot be on both of these jobs at the same time. Therefore, it is the constraint for each of these functional areas to move forward. And it's almost the Legos in much larger fashion when you've got pieces of equipment that physically cannot move to this other job, and now you see the theory of constraints in play. So just giving it the words that it really is would, I think, really help contractors to see it in more cases. Not just call it, hey, we've got this one crane and we can't do that. This is our constraint. Learning that language around what this thing really is. It's not about the crane, it's about the constraint that crane creates. And learning to call other things, constraints and bottlenecks helps them to see it, I think, faster than not using the language.
It all breaks down to Legos,
it does.
right?
It all breaks down to Legos.
You should much of life. And so the theory of constraints, there's a book called The Goal, and it was essentially this guy's life work. I mean, but The Goal was the first where he was articulating the theory of constraints. It's kind of a fun read. It tells a story of taking over a factory and doing a turnaround, and then there's several follow-on works from that, and actually his daughter is continuing the work in that area. It is it's very difficult, first of all, to see the constraint in a complex system. And you in a complex system, you start to look external towards your customers and downstream towards your supply chain, and we could have a whole discussion on supply chain and current state of that. But so just identifying it's really, really critical. And then there's the human aspect of it that's also really difficult, because like in the case of that crane, that crane is a physical thing that has operating parameters and everything like that. And so it's this physical thing and you're talking about it. But sometimes we forget there's a who that sits up on top of that crane that's operating that crane. And when you start to talk about that as a constraint, there becomes a lot of pressure and a lot of scrutiny around that resource. And if you don't have your culture set to where like everybody's going to be the constraint at some point in time, that doesn't mean that the person's a bad person, but boy, are they going to get a lot of management scrutiny. There's a lot of excess stuff that goes into that, and it's not bad, it just is. but culturally, it's really really difficult, and so the whole organization has to learn how to work through that, both from identify the constraint, but also just how to navigate that with the human side of it, and as well as the kind of tactical, right brain stuff. We'll get a lot more into the psychology of stuff as we get into it. So we're not going to go into this one, but this is just kind of like the two main areas of the contractor's business model: the project value stream and the talent value stream. Just start there. Start, sit with your team and really look at it. And you don't even have to pick it. Just put some dots on these of going, where are the bottlenecks, where are the constraints, and really take a look at it and start to see how you're aligned with your team, see what you think. If you want to, run it by and have a confidential conversation off to the side, definitely reach out or something. We'll talk to anybody. This is just, we're trying to make the world better a little bit. So, but this is where we would start most of the time. Just internal is with these two areas, and don't forget your critical supporting operations and all those, but layer those in after you've identified the bottlenecks and constraints in these two big value streams going through the organization, and then start to layer in and say, okay, purchasing, might be a constraint, or equipment, resources might be, a bottleneck right now. Like we've got a civil contractor that has to make a really big decision to commit literally millions of dollars to buy certain pieces of equipment to go do a different type of work. And right now they're kind of in between because they don't have the work. They don't want to go commit the resources, but they can't really go after the work until they commit the resources. It's like kind of one of those chicken and egg things. And but at least we know it and we're talking about it very, very actively. That seems very simple, but it's harder to recognize at scale than it seems. Any comments here before we move on to the real people side of this?
Well, just one more example, right, of another contractor of one that just does piling, and they wanted to go out and bid this massive job, but again, looking at what they had to do, they would have had to pony up for all of the materials, all of the pile that had to be in, and they were going to be out of pocket for probably, I don't know, 300 or 400 of those things while they were installing them with no material on hand payments. And the payment terms were like 90 days. And so again, they had to go through and look at where were the constraints, and it turned out their constraint was cash, right? What were they going to do, and could they even build this? Could they get enough bank financing to build this job until all the payments came in? So it turned out not to be equipment. It turned out not to be people. It turned out to be cash. But again, backing into it and really paying attention to what the constraint is as to whether they were going to go down the road on this job or not.
So let me get, was it utility scale solar that was needed the piles, or I'm trying to think what the customer dynamic could be on 90-day payment terms, because I got an add-on story to that also has to do with piles, different contractor.
Yeah, well, I tell you, well, this example was up in Canada. They had leveled out how they were going to pay.
Okay.
It didn't matter, how fast you put it in. It didn't make any difference. They were going to pay over this amount of time, and it was going to be 90 days. So if you were going to speed up your schedule, if you accelerated the schedule, again, that cash was all on you. Besides,
it was just worse on your cash flow, so you had to balance.
That's right.
So cool, not cool in the 90-day payment terms, but again, every project's a little bit different. When one person's good cash flow becomes another person's bad cash flow, that's just the way the world works. But yeah, we had a similar thing on, and it's cool that the contractor you're talking about did that analysis up front and kind of walked into it with eyes wide open. We saw a contractor walk into it with eyes closed, only focusing on the profitability of it and not focusing on the cash flow aspect of it. And it put them in a position where they actually had to go sell the company. And so, the company's still there, but they had to go sell it and take on some other equity from another company, and it was because they walked into that situation enamored with the profitability on the project, not mapping out the cash flow aspect of it. And cash will shut you down instantly. It's like losing blood. You're only going to make it 3 or 4 seconds before you black out, and you got seconds more before you're brain damaged and dead. So yeah, cash is king. So. So now the human side, here's the right brain analysis of the human side. This is not SA. This was Frank Blake. He's the former CEO of Home Depot, and he explained it really, really well. And there's a QR code. Definitely watch the clip out of the interview. Actually, the whole interview is really good. This was part 2, part 1 and part 2 are both really good. But this QR code will take you right to this particular part. And what he talked about was just really simply the organizational effectiveness of anything that you want to do, any change, initiative, improvement, opportunity that you're going after, whatever is really a product of Q, the quality of the idea, times the acceptance throughout the organization. And he said, it was always a big reminder to his leadership team, because Home Depot had like 80,000 employees or something at the time when he was there. So the quality of the ideas is what the leadership team can heavily focus on, right? We can keep polishing the cannonball and get exciting and add another bell and whistle and add this and add this and add some technology and change the UI, and we can do all kinds of really, really cool things and make PowerPoint presentations like this, and it sounds really good. And so we can work that idea until we are sure it's not 100% idea, it's 110%. But when it goes out to the organization, that's the multiplier that is usually the differentiator. It's rarely the quality of the idea going in. It's how well that's accepted by the people as it goes out. And so he gave some examples of some changes that they wanted to make, I think, to their cash manager, or either how their cashiers worked and things like that. And yeah, if the idea is too complicated and it only gets accepted by and adopted by 20% of the people, great, awesome that you had a 95% idea. But you're better off with a 70% idea that gets adopted by 80% of the people. So I thought the formula was pretty simple. Just, I don't know, I'm a right brain person or left brain person. So yeah, I can't even say it. I'm a left brain logical type of person. So this made sense to me on the human side. And my guess is there's all kinds of psychology behind this, Sue, on how, and you geek out on how to get people higher on the A. So
well, just like you say all the time, right? This is about winning the hearts and minds of the people. Again, the quality of the idea can be a 70%er, but if you have not spent the time to communicate effectively and to get feedback and continuous feedback from people, they're just not going to like it. And if they don't like it, it's going to go nowhere. So you have to win the hearts of people, you have to win the minds of people, and it takes good leadership to be able to do that. So yeah, all about the hearts and minds.
So that's what we're going to cover over the next few slides, is how to, tools that both hit the left brain, the logical, here's the workflow side, as well as hit the human side, and help raise both the Q and the A, and look for that what you're looking for is the optimum balance that's between those two. So you're not looking for a lower Q doesn't always equal a higher A. You're looking for this optimum balance, and that's a lot of what we end up helping teams, guiding them through are kind of some guided discovery, and it helps the leaders, it helps us, and it helps the leaders, and it helps the team see where they're going and understand what some of those trade-offs look like and everything, and then you can back up and from a leadership make the right decisions on resource allocations and directional decisions. So one of those is workflow mapping, just really high involvement, and you pick a start and end point. And that start and end point might be like award to start is one that we map out quite frequently. So, we got a job, where, whether it was notice to proceed or a phone call or whatever it was, we got an award on a job, and what's everything that we have to do from that initial phone call or communication or whatever, all the way through to boots on the ground, first day on site. And we call it like perfect first day. Like what has to happen for that foreman and that crew to have a perfect first day? And so then we we back up. I mean, the first thing we do is we kind of outline those two, ends of it, and we identify what are all the initiating activities and all the ways that it comes in, that somebody might get notified that we have a job, and what are all the conditions of satisfaction that the superintendent and then the foreman and the project managers would want to have a really good first day on site. And first day on site meaning, like I can keep going for at least the next few weeks. I can at least, my first short interval plan is really good. And then get the team to start, identifying all the tasks that are in between, and you get a cross-functional team together of the, accounting, maybe estimating, project management, field. You get this cross-functional team together, and you have them all start writing things down on Post-it notes. And I know you love Post-it notes, Sue. So Sue loves Legos and Post-it notes, by the way, in case you guys haven't figured that out by now. So
My menagerie of Post-it
getting
notes.
them to write it down, and then she travels with Post-it notes and whiteboards. But having them write them all down and then start to organize them, and really, writing it down. There's a Admiral Hyman Rickover. He had a quote that we love, which is, "Nothing so sharpens a thought process as writing down one's arguments. Weaknesses often overlooked in oral discussion become painfully obvious on the written page." And it really shows up even on the Post-it note too. Because the thing that we do then is sometimes have the team organize all of those Post-it notes kind of in the right general sequence and everything from award to start, and do it totally silently. And that's an interesting dynamic to back up and go watch when they're doing it super, super silently. Like this team here actually did a phenomenal job of doing it silently. There's a lot of body language going on, but actually not much. And they nailed it pretty well. And again, the objective is not to come up with a really good workflow diagram. The objective is to go back up and watch the team, because this allows you to visually see workstations A through F and see how people are communicating with each other non-verbally. Like, do they know it so well that they're able to really make it all work? So that's a tool that we use quite frequently. It's not overly complicated, but it does take some prep and some setup and everything like that, and it's incredibly valuable. And then you take the output of that, obviously, and you develop your responsibility matrices. You develop a good workflow diagram. You test that. There's all kinds of things that come after that, but this is where it starts. So I don't know. That's this part, Sue. What do you think? I know you've run through this a bunch of times as well.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because you can see my different colors, right? Just one, because they're fun, but two is when you're doing something like this. David's saying doing it silently so you can see how well they work together. When you have the opportunity where, like in this particular slide, there's 7 people there. If you happen to have 7 different colors of Post-it notes, you can see as they kind of go to work, putting this workflow map together, that as they start to combine some of those things, you can see how many colors are in the same spot. So you can see how well aligned their thoughts already were going in, because, hey, this step, we had 5 people say we had to do this step. Other times you may have just one color. So it really does help to see their alignment of thought before they went in, and kind of how often they've maybe worked together on something like this. So it's good to see the outliers and those things that maybe everybody's thinking.
And I think it's important to say that this has more to do with checking the A portion of the team than the Q. So we've seen plenty of times where you skip this step and you develop the workflow diagram and it's there, and there's always in almost every organization, there's a person that is really good at that, maps it all out, it's there, it looks really good. You could go through this entire process, which, for that award to start might take months with the team working through it and getting them to develop it on their own and everything. And then when you look at the finished product, it's really, really close to what that person had drawn 6 years ago. And they're going, well, that was a waste. And you're like, yeah, but we haven't had the process working consistently for 6 years, right? So that's where this is usually more about raising the A. It also, there's a few other things that it does. Is what once you're in there and you start, get past the silent part. I mean, this is all like kind of in the first half hour or so of the exercise after you've worked through it. But then you're starting to have people kind of walk through it, start to finish, and you're seeing how well different people can articulate what's really happening, and they're challenging each other with questions, and they're talking about problems that they regularly have. And so what happens a lot of times, I just saw this, I think week before last, was there's, sometimes you change tools and you didn't adjust the workflow process, and the tool just isn't working, and it's not working as it was thought, or you didn't even know that they were using that tool to go do that job. And if you don't dive into those types of details as a leader, that's really damaging to the company as well. It's nice to say, oh, I hope everybody just figures it out, but that's just not the case.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyways, that's workflow mapping. So now let's talk through, that's internal. So now let's back up and go look external. So your number one priority is really looking at, as a leader, is to get, and as a leader, it's nice to say everybody's leader. So we're talking as a business or business unit leader, as the very top person that's responsible for overall organizational effectiveness. Get your market choices right. You don't want to be the person that chose to double down on the horseshoe factory while Henry Ford was building River Rouge plant. You don't want to be that CEO. And because you're looking backwards and saying, well, it's always been a successful business. It's always been growing. You do not want to be that CEO. So really getting down, Roger Martin defined 5 interlinked questions. Here's the first 3 of them. But this is really where it starts, of going, where will we play and where won't we play? It's really important to identify both of those. Those are kind of like the guardrails, on the sides of the road, with your destination in mind is where we're heading, and your guardrails on each side. It's like, okay, we're not going to play outside of these guardrails, and setting that really specifically. What does winning look like? And that might be defined in terms of market share, types of customers you're working with, types of projects that you're building in market sectors. It might be defined. There should be an element of defining that in terms of a risk and return, to the shareholders of the organization. And then your third question is, what has to be true to win consistently, which usually comes down to it could come down to external market conditions, which you're going to talk to some of those. But also a lot of it comes down to internal capabilities and capacity. So that, as a leader, is your number one priority, to make that decision. So, we talked internal for a bit, now we're going to go external. So let's look at the big expanded project value stream. So this is, we talked about the project value stream internally of, prospect opportunity and opportunity to award and award to start, and the construction of the project and the exit, the closeout of the project. So now let's go take that out a little ways and go look at it from the project owner standpoint and go, okay, the project owner, they've got customers that they're serving. If it's Apple, they've got customers buying their product. If it's Microsoft, they've got customers buying their product, using their services and things like that. And say, like in Microsoft's case, where that translates into construction, for a lot of contractors right now, as it translates into data center construction. And so you got the project owner, and they've got to contend with a bunch of things. They've got to finance the project. They've got to get site selection and permitting, and there's all kinds of things way beyond permitting. If they've got to get buy-in from the area, they may have to get power to make sure there's power availability and water availability and things like that. So there's a lot that really goes into that from the project owner standpoint. There's the architect. They got to design the thing, and all the consulting engineers, and then we kind of go down the tract of the contractors. You got the general contractor, the construction manager, and the trade contractors and the suppliers. So it's important to kind of back up and know where the constraint and where the key bottlenecks are within that broader value stream, right? That's outside of, very much outside of the contractor themselves. So I'm guessing you have a story too. I got a couple good stories to tell in here. You got any stories you want to share first on this one?
Well, it's just I've seen more contracts where, actually working with a CEO of a company, and they were absolutely sure that they were going to get this contract, right? So, their green funnel, they're like, yeah, we are all in, we know this owner, this is absolutely going to come to us. What they failed to look at was going back and looking at the owner financing, because that thing fell right through, and all of a sudden, right, they had not planned very well, and suddenly they were looking at that was going to be like 50% of their next 2 or 3 years work. And now all of a sudden they had to scale down their organization. They had to do a lot of things because they had just really, that whole too many eggs in one basket kind of thing. That, to me, that's what immediately, unfortunately, comes to mind when I'm looking at this, and just knowing the effect of all of those things that an owner has, and what that really does mean, just right at the GC or CM level, and what that can do to them. So that's where my head went immediately on this one.
Yeah. No, that's a good one, and that ties in. So a couple stories. One, one of our team members, Raymond Braswell, and he started life as an architect. That was his training, but then bought into a general contractor at, I think, around 60 million a year, and then they grew it to $900 million a year, and did a successful exit of that contractor. And so he's having fun on his farm and things like that. But that different story, different day. We'll get Raymond on here. But he would go through there and worked with a lot of national accounts, and worked with people that were coming to his area or areas of operation, coming into those areas and looking to go build things. So he spent a lot of time cultivating, as the general contractor, cultivating the relationships, though, at the city level, with the economic development councils and things like that, so that when that project owner came, was sniffing around and thinking, we might develop a project in this area, he could be the GC that was making the introductions for them and getting them introduced around town and things like that, which gave him a very heavy competitive advantage, when it came to selection, how are they going to select the general contractor. So that was, call that, the ultimate in free con, the pre-construction, but the free side of it. But that's the ultimate, is helping connect and helping them with site selection and permitting, and just getting to know all the local politicians and things like that. So that's something that definitely took away from it. Another one is a contractor that we're actually helping sell right now, and he was looking, and we have other contractors that do the same type of work. And I would say all of the contractors do that same type of work in similar areas. They all have their operations are all kind of equal, and they should have very equal outcomes from a margin standpoint, from a profitability standpoint. And this client has several multiples. They run actually close to 4x what industry benchmarks are for financial performance, and they run that really consistently. And a lot of that, and it's not because they're operationally more excellent, and it kills me because I'm an ops guy, so it kills me to say this, but they really looked at, he's just good, right? It's like running with your buddy in the woods or something, and and a bear comes after you, and I sit down and put on my shoes, and my buddy says, "You can't outrun a bear," and I'm like, I just have to outrun you. So his operations are good, right? But they aren't so great that it's creating this great financial return. It's because he realized that about half the project owners that he was dealing with, they were struggling with financing on it. So he made some agreement with some local banks and built some relationships there, and is helping them work through the financing of their projects. So about half their portfolio are projects where they helped the project owner actually make their project a reality. And so when you're that person, you're absolutely loved. And in his case, he's a trade contractor. So there's, he's downstream, but he's helping the project owner on the financing side. And that, so he's obviously going to be getting the work, and the project owner is super, super happy with their work and everything. Just magically, their operations are not horrible, but they're just average, right? So, but the project owner is really happy because they wouldn't even be building the project if it wasn't for him. So that's a perfect example of looking external at the extension of your project value stream and saying, where are my project owners? Where's the bottleneck within that market, and where are the constraints, and then going after and helping alleviate that. So
Yeah, David.
Back to prioritization.
Yeah, David, isn't there's another story too. I believe that the GC went with the trade contractors and suppliers and said, "Hey, we need to put as tight a schedule together as we can," because the project owner was building a casino. And so it wasn't about,
Oh,
yeah, it
yep,
wasn't
yeah, no,
about, I mean, of course it was about the dollar value, but it was more about getting the schedule as accelerated as they could get it, because that was helping the owner with their financing, because they could start turning a profit every day they could get that job sooner. And a good GC, knowing that that's
right.
the market, yes, it's about price, but it's about getting that return faster. And then it all becomes about schedule.
Yeah, that was a super
Yeah.
critical one, and that example, that was
Yeah.
a Raymond example as well, and I think on that one he ended up, it was a steel fabricator that was the it was the constraint on the schedule, and that one just got lucky and got a steel fabricator from way out of town, not a normal person that would be in town to build that project, but they just happened to have excess capacity at the time that project was going on, and so it was a lot cheaper and a lot faster to go bring in the steel from many miles away and truck it in, but that was the differentiating factor for for looking at that. And I watched a data center go out to from one general contractor to the other for the same exact reason. It was a constraint. It was a trade contractor constraint, and I think that one was also in steel fabrication as well. And it's about getting creative. It's about getting creative with your suppliers and starting to really look out. It's about knowing what matters to the project owner, and when it's price, and when it's safety, when it's quality, when it's schedule,
Yeah.
what is it. So yeah, there's a lot here, and when you're like you're in your first two stages of growth, it's just about who's going to give me work and who's going to be able to pay me. That's pretty much, that is your strategy at that point in time. But you should start to think about these things by the time you start to move into stage 3, stage 4, and above, and then it becomes probably very mission critical for your success going from stage 5 to stage 6. So here's one that I know you got a pretty cool story on. You got even some sarcastic emotion and everything behind it, which I think is really cool. Is there's a break even point and a point of diminishing returns for everything that you do. So 100% is, everybody wants to say zero tolerance, everything has to be perfect, and that's actually, unless you're putting a space shuttle into the air, that should not be the requirement. There's a point of diminishing returns for everything, and that's really at the intersection of like, where do I have inputs and outputs, and there's a point in which the cost of the input cost a lot more than the outputs, and maybe that's an economy of scale thing, and you're going to grow past it. But there's also there's a point in which it's gonna have a great return, and there's a point in which it reaches a decline. And so I think you got a good story about a demand from above for perfection.
Oh God, which one? I think I always got to make above.
The one, perfect compliance.
Oh,
It was
that,
an
oh,
HR
that
thing.
one.
You're
Yeah.
scaling, you're ramping
Yeah.
up a job. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
See the
Yeah.
smile on your face. Look at
Well, and
that.
again, I
Yeah.
came from
So
a level 6 type background, so everything was at the high end of scales. But yeah, so we had a time when it was all of the I-9 information coming out, right, where you had to fill out the I-9 forms, and really every one of them needed to be correct, certainly on an audit, because I actually got audited one time, and the little Fed dude comes out, and he comes to my office, and he sits down, and he wants my I-9s, and I give him a desk, and he opens his briefcase, and he sets out his badge, and he sets out his gun, and I thought, my God, he's going to shoot me if I don't have all these things right. But it turns out that every blank on these forms is like $1,000, so it can get very, very expensive. So the company had taken a very drastic step, because there'd been an audit and it didn't turn out great, but had taken the very drastic step, in my opinion, that said we need 100% compliance on every single one of these forms, because we're never going to go through an audit like that again. And so the comment back really was, there is virtually nowhere that you're ever going to get 100% compliance, and if you want it, what are you willing to pay for that, and what is the calculated risk you're willing to take, right? There's got to be some sort of program you can run these things through and get at least a 95 or a 98% compliance, but the amount of money you would have to spend to be at 100% compliance would far outweigh the few uh, issues you'd have if you actually got cited on them. So it was taking it to a ridiculous level of compliance that, for one, you were never going to get there without spending, millions and millions and millions of dollars just to double check that, the spelling is correct and things like that. So, it gets back to that, the kind of the calculations we were showing before. Eventually, the return you're going to get on it, um, it just doesn't outweigh all the spending that you've had to do to get there. Somewhere you cross that line back into diminishing returns.
And it's important to know the math on that and weigh out the risk. And it's hard when you just had something. The cognitive bias on that is the recency bias, right? I just had this bad thing happen, and it cost this much money, and so then since that happened within the last 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 months, that's gonna weigh really really heavy on my mind. Like I personally made a really dumb IT mistake a couple months ago, and anyways, it was costly and time consuming to go work through it, and I could have this much emotion around it. We could put some extra controls, and we could do this and that, and know all those things. Truth is, never made that mistake life to date. Nobody else in the company's made that mistake, since 2005. Nope, we're actually just not going to do anything. We're just going to solve the problem and move on. But honestly, for like the 2 weeks afterwards, I was really frustrated and wanted everything solved. So it's just an emotion. It's a recency bias, type, and that's just a cognitive bias. And we have to be aware of. There's like 140, documented cognitive biases, and we have to be aware that all of us have them. Oh, and by the way, if you have a team, everybody has different ones to different degrees because they have different experiences and ways of processing it. And yeah, that all kind of factors into our, as much as we think we're objective decision makers, that's why it's important to have some of the tools and like really sit down and do the math and ask those questions like, okay, bad event happened, we had a claim, or we had this litigation, or we had this thing, but how frequently does it happen? And yeah. So anyhow, super important thing to know. I mean, that's a simple example, but it happens. We watch it happen a ton in growing companies because they will have a process that's a little bit sloppy. I mean, there's always sloppiness in a process. And then they will get bit by an audit or something like that, or a problem occurs, just like the technology one that I just had. And then they go through there and they try and put a process in place that they're over processing it. And that process, now at the scale that they're doing it just gradually starts eating away, and it's not noticeable at first, because contractors' bottom line is usually measured in millions, and so now you're just eating it away at thousands. But honestly, do that 10 times, starts to add up. You do it 100 times, it starts to add up even more, and these things build up over time, and they also really demoralize the team because you have now people working that aren't focused on the bigger things. They're focused on like looking internal and trying to focus on counting paper clips, so to speak. So again, it's hard balance. This is where leadership's hard.
Well, and sorry, I was just gonna say, it is funny that we bid all of our work knowing there's risk, and just calculating the risk and what kind of risk we want to take and what it's going to take to put those resources in place for the risk we're taking. And yet we want to be extreme in other things, even though our literal work is at a risk.
Is that right? Yeah. So anyways, how we manage risks. So just know it's there. We all have our things in our heads, and there is a point of diminishing returns, and it can be actually objectively calculated. So don't bring your biases to the math, I guess. So continuous improvement. So this is one, where we've talked now about find your big bottlenecks, find your constraints, and look external to your market, to your strategies, and that's your number one opportunity there, is to alleviate any bottlenecks there. But this is really about now looking at a lot of these smaller details within your company, and every company is made up, just like every project, there's thousands of installation tasks that all come together on a project. And there's kind of a standard for doing those installation tasks. The first standard is the standard estimating units that we're using to estimate the job with, wherever we got those from. But that's the beginning of the standard, is like, we're really hoping that we're going to be able to go out there and install the things out in the field for this amount. And that goes the same now, as you move into any of the office management side of, processing an RFI or a submittal or whatever it is. And so it does all start with your standards, and your standards are going to be probably in the form of a production metric, a quality level of what you're expecting for an outcome, and then some sort of a procedural how to go do it. I think we talked in, I don't know, one of the prior, probably in the contractor business model, that standards do evolve over time, right? I mean, all standards start with like a person that has experience kind of going thumbs up, thumbs down. That is your first standard. There's nothing wrong with that. There's only something wrong with that if that same exact process now is being done by a half dozen people, and there's still a person that's thumbs up, thumbs down, and we haven't codified it. But I don't want to digress into the standards piece, but the continuous improvement piece is looking at, okay, you've got that standard, you plan to do the work to the standard, you now do the work to the standard, you follow up and you kind of check against that standard, and then you act upon any improvements. And sometimes those are little small improvements to the standard, sometimes they're little small improvements to the execution, sometimes they're both, sometimes it's just a great, like, okay, cool, we're doing that the right way. And that's the quality control and quality assurance. Quality control is ensuring we're delivering the right outcomes for the process, whatever we set that standard to, and quality assurance is saying we are doing this in a consistent way throughout the organization. It's kind of the one best way to do it. And you kind of run those PDCA cycles over and over. Everything does come down to cycles, whether it's physical or mental or whatever it is. It's deliberate practice in doing it. And then at some point, you kind of climb up the mountain a little bit and you set a new standard in place. And you're like, okay, cool, here's a new standard, new best practices, and we're going to disseminate that across the organization. That in itself gets harder and harder as you scale. It's really easy, when you're small, you both have very little need for standards. So it's a lot of thumbs up, thumbs down. The few standards that you do put in place, you can just you can email out the standards to the two other people that have email addresses, right? It's not that big of a deal. You print the sheet or the checklist, you take it out to the job site, and it's really, it's fairly easy. Like, I can't even imagine what a standard looked like at Kiewit. So like, I just, can't even begin to imagine how you disseminate that across 45,000 employees worldwide. So, but that, anyways, how you disseminate, I don't want to go a whole lot further into it here because there's a lot to unpack here. But I guess any stories, any insights on this part?
Well, probably the insight, just saying, how do you disseminate that to 45,000 people? Really, it's about the repetitive nature, just like here, right? It's a cycle. It's about the repetitive nature of utilizing that standard, implementing a checklist to go with that standard, so that every single time you run it, every person that's involved, if there's a change, it goes back to, it runs up the chain, it gets modified, it comes back down. So very clear communication. But it really is about making sure that you're using and working toward that standard every single time. We would have divisions in different parts of the country that would come together to do a joint bid review. And they may have thought of the process on how to build the work differently, but how they reviewed an estimate was exactly the same, because everybody just used the same standard, the same checklist to that standard. And that's how you keep it going, and that's how you continuously improve it. It's just over and over and over again, and pretty soon everybody knows where to find it. So
yeah, that's I think as we get into the next piece on how we, what do we do once we're kind of checking it and the outcomes are unexpected outcomes. Unexpected can be either really, really good or really, really bad, kind of out of range, or, whatever that looks like. This is where I also love your, how you demonstrated scaling up of the, what you call the root cause analysis process, which kind of comes down to a few questions, right? When something happens that's outside, let's say I expected a production rate of 100 per day or something, and now I look back at the week and my production rate ended up being 70 per day on average. I've kind of got to go back there and look at it and start to say, there's kind of a what, how, and why, series of questions, and there's a lot of details beyond this in terms of the questions, but the basics are just like what happened. Usually, a timeline of events, who were the people involved, and this is not looking for blaming a person. It's just saying who was there, who was involved, what were the tasks, what were the tools, what were the decisions that were made, what were the relevant conditions, and so that's. To me, you start with the timeline, here's our unexpected outcome demarcation point. We might have played that forward from there, so we might be here. The issue may or may not be resolved yet. But either way, let's take the timeline back to the earliest tangible event or decision that was reasonably connected, and start really, laying those things out. And a lot of times, just in doing that timeline process, it's really interesting. One, we find it really hard to get people to go through that in the right level of detail and actually look things up. But now you have text messages, you have, there's hardly anything that isn't on a text message, a phone log, in your email, in your calendar, or in the project management software. There's very few things literally that didn't happen. Oh, and by the way, you can go back to the job site camera, if it's there, right? There's so much information, and just by going through there and really identifying what happened and pulling it all the way back, usually the problem becomes really, really obvious. Like one of them, we had a quality control problem where we had a bunch of an excessive amount of broken panels on a utility scale solar project. And when we start, and it's really easy to go through there and say, oh, well, you just got to take it, you can tell that it's people that are almost trying to manage at the wrong level when they're just like, you got to have accountability. If you're the superintendent, you got to take accountability. You got to do this. They're using all the extreme ownership words. I love Jocko, but you realize like he wrote extreme ownership, like unpack that a little bit. He was in the military. They have standards for all these things. They have this process already in place. So yes, you have to take ownership for following those standards. When we actually tracked it back, once we got past the emotion, and that took a while, when we tracked it back, it was because there was one small change made in the procedures, and it was to level workflow, and we reallocated the task from this crew to this crew, but we only told one crew. so literally it just fell down. I think we told, and there were several crews doing these two different tasks, and so we just didn't tell all the crews exactly what the change was, that we reallocated this task from this to this, and so therefore they had a mess up on it, and that was it. There was nothing else that went wrong. There's no reason to keep going at that point. We had the problem. Okay, cool. We know what we had to do to go fix it and everything like that. But we also know that what went wrong, and we just didn't disseminate the change in the standards very much, and we were just trying to level out workload between crews. And it was just a failure. Both crews had very clear work plans on what they were supposed to do. We literally moved a bullet point from one to the other to level workflow, and we forgot to tell somebody. And it created all this problem. The bigger problem organization was created all kinds of emotion in between, because we ran down this whole accountability and project manager accountability and superintendent accountability and it was like, no, we were actually just kind of sloppy with our procedures, and so you could say that, yes, that's an accountability thing, but no, we just weren't there age and stage of the company to do that. So anyways, that's kind of the timeline. That's the what. The how, is the procedures, the training, the available information, and in this case, once we actually tracked it down to the procedures, that's exactly what it was. And it was one of those moments, why? And there's usually multiple causes. Like when somebody says root cause, for very simple things, there's usually a single root cause. Usually it's root causes. So in this case, there was that one thing that bullet point was transferred, but we really didn't have any clear standards on how we rolled out a process or a process change or anything like that to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks. So yeah, that's fixed, and they're completely moving forward now, in a completely different way. It's an expensive lesson, but not that expensive in the grand scheme of things. So this, Sue, is something, though. This is root cause analysis, and every superintendent, project engineer, project manager at Kiewit that I've ever worked with knows how to do this from a not from a conceptual standpoint, but you guys like had a tool for how you did root cause analysis.
Yeah,
Am I
no,
mistaken
you
on
are
that? Yeah.
exactly
Okay.
right.
So
Yeah,
walk us
you
through
are
that.
exactly right. And it was the same types of questions in the same type of form that we used for everything. It was for and we looked at continuous improvement as, hey, we had a near miss on safety. What happened? How did it happen? Why did it happen? Right? That's where everybody really could hone in when it was based off safety, right? When people started to see that. You mentioned QA/QC, right? When you start to see your dollars go up in rework, then it's a matter of, hey, what are we going to do here? And yeah, it was very much a kind of a fishbone type of root cause analysis, where just picking apart each and every one of the pieces to see, ultimately, why did it happen, and now what do we have to do for it not to happen again. The big leap was when most people could finally move this from, oh my gosh, it happened, now what do we do and how do we fix it, to using these questions for continuous improvement to improve already good operations, right? Because now, yeah, it's a root cause,
Right.
but how could we make it even better, right? If we were assuming this wasn't as good as it could be,
Yeah.
now how can you turn that and make it even more profitable for what we're working on? So seeing the bigger picture.
You mean the excavator didn't end up buried in a mud pit? It ended up achieving 40% more production rate than we had in the estimate, and it's doing that consistently. So yeah, that's an unexpected outcome, and we should absolutely do
Yeah.
a timeline on that and root cause on that, so that we can share those best practices where applicable across the organization,
Yeah.
including estimating.
Well, and that's
So
one of the
yeah,
things that we used to do as well, right? The whole what happened, events, people, tasks, all of that, keeping track of all of that, and then how did it happen? A lot of times, we had people out there doing time studies as work was happening to see this is how it happened, and then looking at how could we make it better. The why did it happen? Why did it happen this way? Well, if we reversed the scraper spread to go in a different direction because the where we had to put the spoils has changed, we could increase it by this much. But we had people there documenting the how over and over and over again, so that we could go back to the why and keep changing that to, you know why did it get better, or why is it going to get better. So
and interestingly, that doing those time studies builds talent. Like so much of what we're talking about here, the act of doing these things builds your team. So there's some of your team members that this just aligns. It aligns all of them, or works to align all of them. But for your people that are high trajectory, going to be moving up into management roles, and there's going to be a few of those in any given team, going through these things over and over develops the skills, so that that time study that your field engineers are sitting out there doing today, by the time they're area leaders, they're going to be able to go through there and see those things and come to that
right,
conclusion in seconds. They don't
that's
need to
right.
see the full movie. Yeah, and that's how you build a team and a talent pipeline. So now we get into improvement category changes. And so there's probably three broad categories, and it's really important to know which one they are, where they fall, and then we're going to get into the some of the personality traits that are better for handling different types of these improvement categories, and give some examples of that. And so the first one is like immediate countermeasures, right? The building's on fire. We need to handle this quickly, and we need to keep operations moving forward. That example of broken equipment on the project that we needed to install to finalize the equipment. We didn't stop and go like, okay, let's go figure out what happened. I mean, you could see what happened, you could quantify what happened, and you immediately had to go. There was no question about reordering, the equipment that needed to be installed, and getting that moving forward. So that's happening in parallel. Those are those immediate countermeasures that need to happen. They're urgent and important. There's small continuous improvements. Those should become regular daily habits. We'll talk through how to make those regular daily habits. We should always be trying to get just a little bit better, a little bit faster each time. And there's a lot of talent development that goes into learning how to see that. Like, so you just said time studies, being able to go out there and just observe the work and see those little details and everything. That's huge. Those, I think, I talked about it before. One of the earliest things that I remember of like really clicking with how important those time studies were was reading something in Keyways magazine, probably in 96, 97. And it was about increasing the yield, and it was like by a half a yard per load on, by using some spray on the bed liner and stuff of the haul trucks and everything. But in the article, it had the project engineer or the field engineer that identified it. It had all the math and all the calculations. I just remember reading that. It was a really simple article, and you're going, okay, that's pretty cool, but a half a yard at a time when you're doing thousands of them adds up really, really quickly. So small continuous improvements always have to happen. And then there's larger resource commitments. Like if you decide that you're going to make a huge bet on 3D printed, buildings or something like that, that's a large resource commitment. That is not an incremental improvement. That is a CEO board level decision that we're going to go commit resources to go into something like that, because it's going to be millions of dollars and it's going to take years. It could pay off huge. It could not, for a whole variety of reasons. So it's like those three categories. And then where I think it's important is where you map those out, and a lot of people have seen this. I think they've called it the Eisenhower matrix before. I think that he was the first person to use it. And Stephen Covey, most people reference it from Stephen Covey of the 7 Habits of, these 4 quadrants of going. You got a matrix, an axis of urgency, an axis of importance, and things that are high urgency and high importance. You have to manage them. Those are crises. Those are pressing problems. Things that are low urgency but high importance, that's what you really have to prioritize, because they're your strategic priorities. They're your new opportunities. They're your planning and execution of the project. They're committing the time and aligning the team. And then there's things that are really low on both sides. I'm guilty of that. I watched my share of YouTube shorts last night and everything because I was tired at the end of a long week. Yeah, it's total time wasting activity. I'm super clear on it. So I have no delusions that I was being productive last night. But it was after a long week and all that. And then you have ones that are lower importance and also lower urgency. And honestly, you should try and minimize them. Say, can we get by without actually doing this task at all? Can I delegate it? What does that look like? So that's kind of the prioritization metrics. 7 Habits of Highly Effective, great book. And here's where everything lays out. Countermeasures, that is high, right? We hit a water line. There's water flooding the parking lot, flooding the road. Yep, that's a right now problem. There is continuous improvement. Really important to know those are somewhere between managing them but also minimizing them. Some continuous improvements like literally just should not be done because it's just a waste of time. So unless there's a compelling reason for somebody to learning and development thing, a lot of continuous improvements, there's an excitement to change just for the sake of change because human bias, we like new things. A lot of us are both afraid of new things and like new things all at the same time. So we're just messed up. Just know it's the wet wiring. This is why Sue got the psychology degree. Call her. Don't call me. And then there's the major resource commitments, and those really need to be prioritized. And unfortunately, for a growing contractor, especially in our current environment where we have these major talent shortages on the front end coming into the trades, and we also have the people leaving the industry just by retirement. At the experience level, the people that are still there that should be focused on those high level, higher or low urgency, high importance type of major resource commitments and decisions. They're just not truly spending the appropriate time. I see this is where you'd say, like some of the value we add is pulling their heads up off their desk for a few minutes. And this is not in a bad way. This is just, you're in the fight. So yeah, how do you help people get there into that corner?
Yeah. And this gets to just like David and I laugh about this all the time. Sometimes you do have to just grab somebody by the back of their neck, have them lift their head up off the desk and see beyond, their head looking down, right? I know cultures that are trying to fix the texting issue by, people with their heads down texting by putting stoplights in the sidewalk so people can see them. But all they're doing is, one, they're probably keeping people safe, but two, they're perpetuating that act of continually looking into that one, area. So sometimes you have to help somebody either put their phone down or put their stuff down and just get them to sit back and see the bigger picture. Some people can get there faster than others. Others are more, again, in those immediate countermeasures. Others are more strategic in their thought. And there's, you have to bring people along at the speed at which they can come along, no matter what we do. Anytime, David and I go into contractors to help them, we can only move at the speed at which the team can move at. And that is where we help to, again, get their heads to see slightly wider or slightly up a little bit higher as to what that next step is. So if there were a magic bullet, we'd be using it, but there's not any one, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's funny as it sounds like, and this is just from my own experience as a contractor, there are certain things like we would prepare very heavily, for attorneys or litigation or something like that, because you're paying so much money for all of that, that whole cast of characters to go be there. The preparation burden's really high. In some cases, that is our key value add, is just quite simply that we're scheduled, we're going to be there, and so everybody really stops and pauses to go focus on that. And that is just they're on the business day, right? And that's 1 out of 20 days a month. That's pretty good. And that's really, it's really, really hard to go do. It truly is hard to go do. So, I mean, I'm not, that's not casting stones. That's just, a lot of our design of how our engagements work came down to, like, how we operated as contractors. Because you spend a lot of time in that quadrant that's managing. And, it's not always fighting fires, but there is still a lot of even just low-level stuff that you have to do, not super important, but just stuff that routine stuff you have to do in that management quadrant, especially, with the changing workforce dynamics. You're training people. There's an increased burden of quality control, quality assurance for managers. So the thing that does get pushed all the way out is that, those bigger, longer-term decisions and everything. And those bigger, longer-term decisions around people, around strategy, around systems. So that's it's just kind of how to look at that, and an overlay with that chart. Okay, so that kind of brings us in, and now, Sue, really, this is all about you, and I think this is probably the right time to talk both about Clifton Strengths, what it is, how it works, what it measures, and then we can talk about how important, say, the restorative strength is when it comes to running those immediate countermeasures. So I don't know how we're going to attack this. We got some stories in here, but this is about organizing your people for their best and highest use.
Well, I'm a Clifton Strengths geek, so let's just get that on the table so everybody knows where I'm going with this whole thing. I took the Clifton Strengths assessment probably, 15 or 20 years ago. And what I've found out over time is, one, it's just an assessment. It's like any other assessment when you're talking about, whether it's DISC or Myers-Briggs or Predictive Index or Colby, any of those that come in and try to measure something about the human form. The Clifton Strengths measurement is the one that I tend to lean into. I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach, so I get it more than I get the others. The big thing about the Clifton Strengths assessment is the results that you get. You can see this DNA kind of line where the 10 marks on the left-hand side are really the top 10 where you live, whether you live as an executing person, whether you live as a relationship builder, as an influencing person, or as a strategic thinker. So that's kind of your top 10. The other 24 are the ones to the right. The ones in the middle are kind of those things that you might go to on occasion, but it's not really where you live. It's not really the person that you are. It's not really how you show up at the table. It's not how you give and get information. And then the probably the far third are the ones where if you were to read the descriptions of those themes, you would be going, oh, that is not me, that is not me, that is not me, right? Well, if you look at it, every single person, if they took this assessment, they would have this DNA strand. And the chances of you having the same DNA strand as somebody else is literally 1 in 34 million. So when we want to say that our people are individual, all you have to do is look at the results, because the chances of seeing the results the same, your results the same as anybody else, is going to be entirely different. So I go back to my civil days, right? If you're going to build a job, you're probably going to need an excavator. You probably need a couple of excavators, different sizes with different size buckets, with different attachments that go to each one. You may need a fleet of scrapers. You may need a fleet of trucks. You probably need a water truck. You're going to need some pickup trucks. You're going to need a grader. There's a menagerie of things you're going to need to build this job. Same kind of thinking with the people, right? You're going to need a menagerie of people to build a job appropriately for all the things that you want to do. You may have an owner who is very, well, let's call them high maintenance, right? We all like to call them that. You may need somebody that is very high in the relationship building way of coming to the table, to be able to hear what that owner has to say, build that relationship with them so that you can talk, knowledgeably and easily, without any combative nature, talk through differences. You might be working on a job that has a huge community outreach effort where you've got to meet with people on a regular basis and talk through what's coming, what's happened, things like that. You may need someone that has more of an influential background where they can tell people in large groups and help get them on the same page, right? Help them to understand things together. Again, a lot of times people with that are in areas or divisions, things like that, those that have a bit more of a strategic bent, where they're looking at multiple resources and they're looking at multiple ways to use them, how to put them in the right plan to get to where you want to go. So there's a lot of different ways that people present themselves at the table. The nice thing about the Clifton Strengths, the 34 report that shows kind of this is who you are. If anybody wanted the guidebook on how to talk to you and how to really kind of figure out who you are, I find the Clifton Strengths 34 report being, kind of just that. Those top 10 themes that you have, the DNA strand on the left here, it actually tells you not only how you can lean into your strengths and how you can be fabulous using those strengths, it also helps to tell you some of the blind spots that others can see that you don't when you lean in pretty heavily to those. So there's a lot that can be done. There's a lot that can be learned. There's a lot that can be taught in groups, in teams, to help people see what their best asset is that they're bringing to the table, and help them to have it's all about communication, right? Somebody has to be able to hear you. You have to be able to understand what they're saying, and you have to be able to understand what that information actually means. Had an interesting situation happen one day. We had someone who was working on a training guideline, and they had written it up, and it was looking really good, and they had sent it to one of their managers, to several managers, right? Because they were trying to get some feedback on what was going to work, what wasn't going to work. And the person who had sent the information over happened to see one of the managers in the hallway and said, "Hey, so what did you think about the training manual that I sent over?" And he goes, "Do you see any changes? Is there is there anything I need to know? And the manager just responded, he goes, well, I don't care. And needless to say, the I don't care was came across very differently to the receiver of that conversation than it was meant from the person who was talking. The person who had asked the question, one, didn't ask a very good question, right? Two, was asking it knowing they wanted to get a bunch of contextual answers, right? Things that they were looking for some very definitive feedback. The person they asked happened to be high in adaptability, which is a very go with the flow kind of person. So that what this manager was saying wasn't that he didn't care about the product. It's that he didn't care how it got rolled out. None of that mattered to him. He would go with whatever came across his desk. So funny how just a very short conversation that literally in 1 minute, I happened to watch it, in 1 minute, it fell apart. And luckily we stopped it, got him in a room and said, okay, whoa, let's back up. Somewhere this conversation went off the rails. And so we backed up and talked about, the better questions and how we could really get this across. And within about 5 minutes, they were back on the same page. Everybody really understanding, kind of where they were headed with the next iteration of this training guideline. But it shows you how quickly you can go off the rails, how quickly things can go south, whether it's with your own team, whether it's working with an owner, whether it's working with, some other trades, working with your suppliers. It can go off the rails very, very quickly if you don't understand how you disseminate information and how others might be hearing it. So there's a lot to be said for the clarity of that. So David, I don't know if you wanted much more on that, but I was going to jump into this restorative strength quick, and then we can come back if you have some more questions on this.
That's perfect, and I think this one's interesting just because this is some insight into what we are looking for when we start to, and what anybody should be looking for when you kind of set out to make some improvements, and you need takes a village type of thing, and they
That's
can't all
right.
look the
That's
same.
right. Yeah. So in this particular case, a person that would have these top 5 themes, the 34 are all called themes. These are their top 5. So this is where their greatest strength can come from. But also to know that your greatest strength can also be your greatest weakness if you lean too hard into it and not realize, that others may not have that same strength at the top. So somebody with restorative strength, I mean, you just think about it. They want to restore things. They want to fix things. So first and foremost, if you're talking to people and you've got a friend of yours and you're chatting it up a bit, and they tend to go back to just words and communication that talks about going back and fixing something, restoring this to where it was, making right the thing that is broken. You probably could be hearing the restorative strength. So if you are at if there's go back to the immediate countermeasure, right? If you have got a backhoe and you have just dug up a water line and pulled it right out of the ground, and there's water gushing everywhere, chances are somebody with their restorative strength is going to go, I need to fix that, right? That's going to be their first thought. They are going to most likely, certainly looking at this person's strengths, they're going to go to their number 3, which is a ranger. They're going to say, well, how do I move this equipment around? How do I move these materials around? What's the best way to get this stuff in order to be able to fix the problem I have at hand? Number 4 is analytical. They're probably running through some quick measurements, some quick analysis in the background in their head, going, okay, I'm going to need 4 more people. I'm going to need this many lengths of pipe. I'm going to need somebody to go down and shut off that water main. All of those things, they're thinking of those in the same time frame, but they're always thinking about getting the problem resolved, right? Fixing that issue. And then that number 5 being responsibility. If there was say this is your foreman, if there was a general superintendent there saying, hey, go get this done, the foreman most likely said, yes, I will. And so their responsibility says, I have said I'm going to get this fixed, therefore I will get this fixed. So this is a person who is going to be, let's just face it, hell bent on getting on getting this issue taken care of as quickly as they can in the most in their own mind, and the arranged and analytical version of that is how could they get the resources and the materials and the people all in place to get this thing taken care of in the quickest amount of time. And they've probably done that math. If somebody asked them, they've probably said, this is going to take me, 90 minutes to 2 hours to complete, because they've already done the analysis in their head. So this is somebody you would hear, you would see, you would actually be able to watch this person work and maybe be able to figure out that these were some of the strengths that they brought to the table. So somebody you definitely want around if you've got an immediate countermeasure that needs to be done. They're going to be able to attack it quickly and thoroughly.
And this is actually a real person, and an amazing individual. And what's cool is the combination of these in the top 5, for being head of field operations and looking at it and going, okay, obviously when we have a problem in the field, it's a very immediate problem, like you said, a utility strike, a major impact on a job site, unfortunately sometimes a safety incident. That has to be, when you hit that escalation button, when you call that from the field, that is what you need Superman essentially to show up. I mean, that, and to be able to solve it. At the same time, then, really high developer of people, right? Let's go develop people. I care about the people. Let's develop them. Let's make it happen. Good arranger, like you said, of like, okay, this person should do this, and how you do it. Some analysis. If this thing keeps happening, what system do we have to put in place to go through there and solve this into the future? And responsibility of, okay, if I said it'll be done type of thing. And that, so it's a really great combination for that. And realizing though that it's also gonna lean heavier towards the management quadrant of that. And so, and that will be somewhat in conflict with the person that's over there going, I hear you, okay, but to solve that problem, we got to put this thing in place, and it's going to take a couple years, and then, it's going to start going out, and there, things are going to be wrong, so it's the magic is getting all of that to go work together. That is the magic of the team, right? So you need all these different people that have these different strengths, and then you need some people that are great, like, and that's like your strength, and like you would fall in that category. You're like a people integrator. You're great at pulling together all those disparate personalities. I go into dictator mode of like, how about you do this, you do this, you do this. Like I'm an ops guy. You use a lot of the tools. So just so you guys know that when I'm talking about the tools, it's very left brained when I'm talking about the tools. Sue feels the tools and she actually gets it right. So just know that when you're hearing me talk. But that's what you're looking for in a team, especially as you scale, is you need all of these different people working together and recognizing the different people's strengths and everything. And so like on this.
Well, I was going to say this is what you're talking about. It also makes me think about when you're looking organizationally, and certainly when you start getting into in scalability, like a 4, right, for a contractor. When you start looking at this, luckily you've got those people that can think more long-term, strategic, looking at how long it's going to take to do things. Others are more like, tell me what needs to be done now and my piece that I can get in now. All of that goes along with an organization's culture, right? With their mission, their vision. Have they done a strategic plan, and how are they going to put that strategic plan into place on a year-over-year business plan? And every single person with every level, whatever their level of strengths looks like, has a place in an organization. Some are just at different levels than others, based on just background, expertise, knowledge, all of those things. But I just look at it, if you were going to come in and do an estimate and you wanted to have all of the thoughts in there about how this job should actually be estimated, you would not take the same person to estimate the same type of jobs over and over and over and over again all the time, because now you get no diversity of thought, you get no diversity of action, you get the same answer all the time because they just don't know anything else. Here you can get everybody in their best and brightest, right? In the role that is success at that level for the strengths they bring to the table. So there's a lot of ways to use this to help the teams develop that kind of strengths forward thinking.
And as you're talking about that, and this is one I didn't even plan on this, but if when we're starting an improvement project with the company, there's obviously start with what the objective is and everything, but we start with like developing the team. We have a kind of a checklist of questions of the types of people we're looking for, and we'll start with an interview process of interviewing these. Usually it's maybe 40-ish people or so to narrow down to an improvement team of 6 to 10, depending on the what we're going after, and we're looking for a variety of different types. So first of all, email or call or something if you want that list. It's not perfect. We'd have to probably talk you through it and everything. But in general, we're looking for those people that like, who are your really high producers, your people that hit the target 10 out of 10 times. And for some stages of growth in the company, it'd say like, that needs to be all the people. You don't need to talk to anybody else. And then we say, who are the people that are really crazy creative, that are coming up with some really wild ideas, and some of them totally don't work, and some of them are absolutely brilliant. You just can't tell the difference between the two. And who's a person that a lot of people would point to say they had a meaningful impact on their development over their careers, and who are the developers of people, and then you need the Johnny Appleseeds that spread the idea, like, hey, who's your good socializers, who are your good communicators, right? And and if you have somebody like me at the top of the organization or something, that's more left brain, I'm like, yeah, he's an all right person. I just don't need people like that. They talks too much, right? But as you go through stages of growth, you need people that can do all those things, right? And usually those conversations, the right person, it's not just that they're jabbering at the water cooler about nonsense or something like that, or negativity or anything. No, I mean they're having very systematic conversations, and you watch them, they're shaping the whole organization into place, just nudging it along. And they're not always on the org chart as leaders, but they are definitely connectors. And so we're looking for a variety of different personality types, which all show up obviously in the Clifton Strengths and a variety of the other psychometric tests or they're not tests, they're just evaluation of their tools. That's all they are. It's not like a pass fail or anything on any of these things. And so though some people would want to use it that way, so I'd say if you're talking to anybody that is using it as a pass fail, just end the conversation. I can't say that in a better way. Obviously if there's like 34 million combinations or something like that, then there's not the one right combination to be a project manager or something like that. So anyways, when that, we can definitely talk through what we're looking for, and it's a diversity of people. And then when we're interviewing, we are looking for their ability to get along with others, to reasonably get along with others, knowing that there will be rubs. There will be a rub between somebody that's a high restorative and a high strategic. And and there's just no reality that there will not be a rub between those two people, because they are working on two totally different time spans. There's going to be a rub between somebody that's a high developer of people and a high arranger versus somebody that's just like super high on execution and accountability and responsibility and like all of the E type of words, because they're like, why would you need any of that? Yeah. Just do your job. So there's going to be these natural rubs, and we're looking for people that can reasonably see past those things and get along, and that's what actually makes the change happen within the organization. So anyways, yeah, definitely reach out if you want to talk through that. I guess we geeked out on that enough, Sue. So, but bottom line is people are really important to the whole improvement process. So let's move to some very tangible how do we make some of these improvements? How do we make prioritizing small continuous improvements, how do we make it a very tangible, workflow tool that you use? And so we're going to cover two really quickly. One is called fill or kill. And that gets its terminology from the stock market, where you put in a bid to go buy a certain amount of shares in a company at a certain price by a certain time, and it's a fill or kill. Like it's either going to be filled 100% or we're going to kill it, and we're not going to go through the order. But so that's the background of the name. But what it is, it's really really simple. Is you're getting the team of people around to identify just little things that bug them. I mean, these are not major things. These are not saying let's go enter a new market or something like that. These are just little things that end up bugging you. I don't know. I'm just looking around my office right now. I got a dozen little things that just bug me in my office. So, one per Post-it note, like Sue, Sue's rules,
Yep.
one per Post-it note. But what you're doing that's a little bit different is you're forcing people to clarify it and say, here, I see this improvement, this bugs me, it's this tool, we could use a checklist, whatever. These are all small things that probably, I'd say, should be no more than 8 hours to actually make the improvement. Somewhere between 15 minutes and an 8-hour type improvement. If it's bigger than that, put it somewhere else. We can talk about that. And then you're going through with the team and you're getting them to actually share what those ideas are, what kind of bugs you, and everything like that. And then Sue's like, yeah, that bugs me too, right? Now you're starting to get people, communicating in a line, and you just put them on a little board of, here's the things that we've identified. Okay, cool. Here's the things that we're now working in progress that we're actively working on to fill. And then here's the ones that got filled, and here's the ones that got killed, and just setting some rules around like, okay, if something's on the board for more than 30 days, obviously I don't have enough emotionally invested in this thing that's bugging me. I had enough emotionally invested in it to go put it on the Post-it note, but I don't have enough emotionally invested to spend an extra half hour at the end of the day to fix it. Like keep looking over at my inbox over there. Yep. It's been that way for 3 months. It bothers me every day I look at it. I just don't have the emotional, I'm not ready yet to clear it all the way out. But there's a few cool things psychologically that does. One, it gets people in the habit of doing it, because if I told Sue I'm going to go now, well, shoot, now I guess I told everybody that I'm going to clean up my inbox, so I guess I better do it. But so there's that psychological thing, right, that I've committed to doing this. But then there's also this kind of loss aversion thing of I'm going, like, if I haven't made active progress on this thing in 30 days, we're just going to move it over to the kill column. And it doesn't mean it's dead forever, but it means that I'm going to have to take the energy and write it on out again on a Post-it note or something and bring it back up and say, yes, I promise I'm going to lose that 20 pounds this year, not last year. I know I've said that 6 years in a row, but I'm going to do it this year. And again, these are just, I mean, kind of laughing and joking about it, but this should be fun. These are not major things. This board should be kind of a fun board that starts to eliminate a bunch of these little small details. Jeff Bezos calls them paper cuts. That's what they call them inside of Amazon. And it's like, the teams that are focused on the really big initiatives, the strategic initiatives, you don't want them, they should never slow down to go work on the paper cuts. But if those paper cuts persist, it's like, I think Muhammad Ali had a quote that said, it's not the mountains in front of us that tire us out or something, it's the pebble in our shoe. And so these are the pebble in the shoe things. And so it generates it shifts internal locus of control from external to internal. I can do this. And you start, at the end of a week or month or whatever, you start putting the Post-its that are in the filled column, you start putting them into a container and the killed ones, and you start seeing these things grow over time. It's actually a pretty neat thing to keep up, but the team won't keep doing it usually themselves. It takes the manager. As you say, Sue, it's the manager. It takes the manager that goes through and does the work and generates the excitement and keeps things going and nudges people along to do that and stop other people from hey, go take the 15 minutes, just go clean that thing up. You can kill the Post-it note, or you can put it in the filled column. And so there's so many little things from that, and that builds momentum for other stuff. So it goes hand in hand with what in the kind of lean body knowledge they call the 5S process. If you look it up, it'll be most commonly under 5S, but some companies have shortened it down to 3S, some have expanded to 8, whatever it is. But it's the basically saying, at a certain time on every shift, usually the beginning of shift, we are going to take X amount of time. So it's a time boxed activity, and we are going to do these things. We're gonna sort things that are in the area. So meaning that if it should be in the area, it's there, and if it should be off the site, like say on a job site, don't let the inventory build up until the end of the job when you demobilize. If you know it's no longer going to be used, get it off the job now, sort it out, and then set things in order. That might be organizing, and staging materials and equipment in the right area on the job site. That might be setting up your tools and getting, just the tools that you need in the work area for the tasks that you're going to do, and having those all lined out and making it very visibly clear when those tools aren't there. How many times have you set out to go do something and you don't have the right tool, and because you can't find it? And shine it, just clean up the space, but polish things up. And a lot of times there's a lot of value, especially with equipment, of just in the process of cleaning the equipment, you can find little hairline fractures, you can find little leaks, little things like that you can fix well before they become big problems. Standardize. Take some time, make a quick little checklist, and it doesn't have to, checklists don't have to be this like super, big deal. They can be a piece of cardboard in a job site trailer that's got 5 things on it. That's just a reminder for that particular job or something like that. And then the sustainability is like you're continually running your PDCA cycles. You're checking against your standardization, and you're continually doing it. So it's, these 2 tools, and usually they go together. So maybe at the end of your 5S and once a week or something, you come together and you look at your fill or kill board, and that's what starts to build this capability. Again, you can't continually improve your way. There was no continuous improvement from the horseshoe factory to the Henry Ford factory. That is not a continuous improvement type of change. So be aware that you can't continuously improve your business through all the stages of growth. There will be changes you have to make to your strategy, your management systems, and your structure, but the continuous improvement, it must be constant throughout. What did I miss, Sue?
Well,
if anything.
Yeah, I'm not sure you missed anything, but I just really want to put an emphasis on the 5S, right? And like David was saying, it's really anything. It's the stuff sitting in an office. It's the stuff sitting at your job site. It's the stuff in the parking lot. It can be specific to, safety. It can be as general as inside these walls, right? But it's really creating that habit is what's sustaining the whole thing, right? Is creating that habit. But you'd be amazed at how many times when you sort through things and just put it in order of just the extra stuff, you just find that you just don't need. And the more you do it, the more you're going to find of things you probably just don't need. So
I have a qualifying question on that one for you, Sue. I struggle with ever throwing out a package of Post-it notes, especially the ones that are hard to find colors. So does this same 5S apply to Post-it notes and the pens? Pens, I'm a big pen geek on the different colors of pens that might go with that.
Well, I believe in sorting my Post-it notes. They are in order.
Oh, okay.
I shine them up all the time. They are usually the standard size. And then I just always have them. Now, if I get down to one, I will, like there's literally one sticky left on here, I will find a reason to use it because it hurts my heart to get rid of sticky notes. So.
Yeah, you can't throw it out. Okay, all right, cool. I just wanted to know if there was limits to that. Yeah, I'm also looking over, and I have they are sorted, they're organized, and they're in all the different colors of 3x5 index cards, 2 different sizes of Post-it notes, all the colors and everything. As funny as it sounds, those are. I never thought when I started out as an apprentice, I never thought I would actually be geeking out over Post-it notes, but whatever. Let's move on before it gets really bad. So this is where we're going to start with kind of a group exercise. So we just covered a lot, and again, this is not for all stages of development or anything like that. There's a lot of nuances to it. This is just, we're trying to give you a relatively quick overview. Google some things. There's resources on our website. Reach out, ask questions. This is the part where we're going to outline a posted exercise. I know, kind of funny, we've been talking about this the whole time, but that helps align the team. So similar to the workflow mapping, but more about how do you take and start to prioritize these major improvements. Like, let's say you got through the workflow mapping and you're like, yep, we need to buy more, different purchasing software, different, labor tracking software, different equipment management software, whatever it is, pretty major change or something like that. Or we need to enter this market. We need to enter the healthcare market or expand our offices out to a certain location. So another kind of a 2x2 matrix way of looking at things, having one axis that's what's the return from a low return to a high return, and from the other axis being basically what's our execution on it from low to high, and that's a combination of time, cost, and risk, right? And risk could show up in several different ways, but it's like reasonably, what's our execution? Risk is it really high cost and low risk? Is it a modest cost and a really high risk of probability of failure? And those things would mathematically come out differently. So in concept, fairly straightforward. And if you have obviously something that's a very, very high cost and a very low return, that's pretty simple. It's the kill category. And if it's got a very high return and a very low cost and short time frame and everything, that's an implement category. So those two categories are really, really easy. The hard category is the one that's in the upper right quadrant, which is why they call it the challenge category, because it's got both a high cost and probably a long time frame on return, and it's got a potentially very, very high return. And challenge the challenge with that challenge quadrant is that I don't think you can be a contractor without being an optimist. I mean, let's face it. There's other things you could do besides making a living in construction and starting at 0 dark 30 every morning and taking on, oh, so you're not going to pay me for 90 days, no matter how fast I get it done. I mean, there's not to say there's no other industries, but let's face it, this is one of those more challenging industries. So we're mostly optimists that are optimists are going to make it to the top of the organization, where by and large, and those are the people that are going to be making these decisions. So you have to work against that bias, because these are those big risks, right? And so you've really got to look at that, know that you're going to have that bias walking into it. Make sure that you don't go forward on something that has a very high risk just because you're enamored with the return on it. They call it summit fever. They call it there's all kinds of optimism bias. They call it all kinds of different things. But either way, it'll kill you if you're a mountaineer and you go for the top of Everest and a snowstorm comes up. So it's worthwhile reading that book. Everybody was experienced, and yet it was lots of people die every year. So with that said, now that we got that downer in, let's go get into the group exercise. And we're going to call it P.I.C. S.M.A.R.T. So, and it has to do with both picking the right, objectives and then defining those objectives properly. The general, I guess, facilitation tool that we're going to be talking about here is called an affinity diagram, or the KJ method. It's got its history back in the 1960s, and where and you can look this up, but in general, it's for taking really disparate groups of people, and and everybody sees things differently. Like, Sue, you always talk about like the picture that's in your head is complete. You have a very vivid picture in your head, and I've got a very vivid picture in my head. And the problem is there is no way for us to actually communicate what that is.
Right.
Like, there just isn't. And so the magic of scaling an organization, getting teams to work together, is to try and make your picture as visible and my picture visible, and then working to go take the best of both of those and probably come up with option C that's better than either one of us could come up on our own. So it's really a process that's about getting people to share and then getting people to organize, and you start to see what people have affinity for and things like that. That's why they call it that. The KJ method was just the gentleman's initials. So here's what you do. Pretty straightforward. You know, maybe run the team through some basic training. Maybe you constrain this activity a little bit to a certain part of the contractor's business model. Like, you know, maybe you constrain it down to just their just the project value stream, or just the talent value stream, or even just a segment of it. But either way, just, you know, define the boundaries and get the team, you know, assemble the right team that's there. And this team can be much, much broader, right? So this doesn't have to be, this is not the decision-making team. This is the brainstorming and alignment team. So this team can be a lot broader and everything. So don't think about this as an efficiency exercise. Once they're there, you know, have them call it 3+2. Identify 3 big bottlenecks, 3 things that are really slowing down our internal operations, and 2 external opportunities. And that way you're seeing who thinks very internally, and truly 80% of your people probably should be thinking mostly internally, right? Because that's their job. And 20% of the people are going to have some pretty cool external ideas. That's probably the right ratio. But you always want to stretch everybody to go see all these things. So have them write those down on a Post-it note, you know, what, when, who, how, you know, encourage them to be constructive, but don't avoid the uncomfortable. You know, it's like, if I'm in charge of, you know, a department or something, you know, just go ahead and say it. Like, yeah, they're having a lot of bottleneck in Dave's department, and we're not getting whatever, the drawings out or something out of his department. Just say it. Or there's a lot of errors, and you're not trying, and you know, it's hard, but you've got to make sure that, you know, people aren't just avoiding it because they might like me. That's never actually been the case in my career, but whatever. Get them down to where too general, too many, just right? Like, so too general is like if somebody says, we need more training in here. Like, training and communication always come up. They're like the whitewash type of thing. Now, like, okay, let's get more specific. And then there's too many where somebody, you know, there's somebody that threw away the Sharpie that you gave them, and they busted out the number 2 pencil or something, and they've gotten really, really small writing. They've got like, we've seen dozens of things on a list, like literally with them lined out like it was a checklist. Like, let me tell you everything that's wrong with you on one Post-it note. So get to the just right part, right? Like, okay, hey, I'm in accounting, and I'd just like to know when you guys win a project, so I can get it set up so that I can run payroll when, you know, first labor hits the job. Just simple request. You know, that's a really, you know, that's a common one. So that's an example, and just get it just right. Then go through there and have everybody post it up. And then set a timeline. So get everybody, first of all, like, give them a certain amount of time to come up with these, you know, they're 5, they're 3+2. You know, probably give them 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes for this. Ask them to really think. And, like, you know, for different types of exercises like this, you want to give people more time. In this case, you really want them to think. Like, this is not a brainstorming of how many you can get. This is like, what do you think your top 3 are? And you're going to learn a lot about the organization based on that. You might want to use Sue's advice on using some different color Post-its at this point, for the reason of being able to see who wrote down what, you know, and because it's not, you're not pointing anybody out. You're just trying to identify who's thinking about what at what time. And then once they've posted, you know, they've taken the time, they posted them all up. That's step 1. Then go through there and run through a grouping exercise, and maybe set your time of, like, target time of 10 minutes. Oh, and I'll say, you know what, Sue, this is actually one, when they're posting it up, like, as you set the rules, this is great. Sue usually always sets a person that's like a gatekeeper. So when, you know, they go to post it on the wall, like, nobody can actually post it directly on the wall. So it's got to go to the gatekeeper. And then Sue, like, stands right next to the gatekeeper and gives them coaching on, like, you know, back to the too general, too many, just right type of thing. Can you describe how you approach that? Like, who do you end up looking for in the group when you're doing this? And then what do you do? Because I think that's actually a super valuable step.
Yeah, we've done this before in groups from, you know, 10 to 30, right? So there have been some pretty big groups. But yeah, the interesting part is, one, trying to figure out who's been paying attention from the last slide, and actually put one item per Post-it note with enough information that it was going to make sense, you know, if somebody read it a little bit later. And so what would happen is, one of the groups we had, I know one, I had probably about 12 people in it, and we started posting them all up there. And it was a matter of one person was they'd gone up there first, and they'd had some pretty good ideas. But then they kind of sat there and were starting to read other people's things, and they were really kind of having some comments on them. So I pulled them back and said, okay, well, then I'm going to have you be our, what we always call them is they were going to be the rubber duck. That if you were a rubber duck and you knew absolutely nothing, would this post-it note mean anything to you? So now everybody had to go through our rubber duck, and the rubber duck would read it and go, I don't understand what this means. Please tell me. Or I'd send them back to rewrite it. And then somebody else would come up and say, we're trying to get better productivity in this one item. And he's going, okay, well, is this on all jobs? Is this on one job? How specific is this? So send him back to rewrite. But it was a really good exercise, because in this particular case, we had somebody who wasn't really being disruptive, but wasn't being completely engaged with others, did their part, but then wasn't being completely engaged. So for that reason, I brought them in on that one. Other times it's the person who really maybe is struggling the most with it, where it's a matter of, hey, read these other ones. And if you have a question, let's go back and find the person and have them rewrite it so that it can be read a week, a month from now, and still be as understandable as it is in the context of the meeting today. So we tend to find the people that once they're doing it, can they communicate well? Are they able to ask good questions to get, a revised post-it note? Are they encouraging others to write a few more things, right? Hey, we got a couple more minutes. Let's write a few more. So you start to see how they, kind of go back to the Clifton Strengths, how they interact with people and how they become part of that team, or what part of that team they really are. And David, I know you and I have done it a couple of times before, and it's always very interesting to see how people use that kind of post up thing. I've actually had a few people that have volunteered to be the person, the gatekeeper, right? And say, hey, I'll let me do that. I think I have some questions, right? So those are the ones that are looking for usually one of two things. One is either to get some of their knowledge out by asking better questions, or they don't think they know enough and they want to ask those questions of others when those are going up there. So there's a lot of different reasons to have people do that. And I don't know of any one that hasn't turned out well, because we've used different people at different times in these exercises to kind of be that gatekeeper, or even the timekeeper, right? Just keep everybody engaged and involved. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think probably the one thing to caution against is this is not a 100% rule, but in general, be really aware of people that are higher up on the org chart doing this, just because people will take feedback as judgment, things like that. This is a people development exercise. This is not a debating exercise. This is not any of those things. So it's like we're looking for that person that is, high attention to detail, good communicator, and building that person. So, and again, not 100%. I mean, we've definitely seen some people in leadership positions do a phenomenal job doing this, but they are usually at the size company where they shouldn't be doing it, just because there should be a half dozen other people that could do that. So they shouldn't be doing it from a talent development standpoint. But then, to be super honest, we've seen lots of control freaks. I'm in that category, right? So I would, that's a dumb idea. Why don't you go back and rewrite that? So anyways, it's really important to get at this stage. This is about getting people's ideas and thoughts clearly on the playing field. This is not about debating them at this point, at this stage. So that gets them, kind of to step one. Super important to get there. Then step two is to go through there, and much like we talked about in the high involvement workflow, getting the people to go through the grouping exercise, right? So now you've taken in, if you have 20 people in the room, you have 100 Post-its up on the board. And so now it's like, so hopefully there's a lot of overlap. Hopefully it's not 100 unique Post-its. And so now it's about starting to group these things together. And if it's a smaller group, if it's, 6, 7 people, go ahead and just set your stopwatch, 10 minutes, and they should be able to organize those into groups. If it's a larger group, do it in, 2 to 3 minute cycle times and pair up, different people in groups of 2 or 3 to go up there and start working on the organization. Because again, you're not trying to get this task completed at this point in time. You are trying to align people. And so by them constantly physically interacting with these different Post-it notes and looking at it, and they have to read it to understand it. If they can't understand it, they've got to go back there and ask, for somebody to rewrite it. They may take some time to rewrite the thing on the spot, so that, just rewrite for clarity. But they're trying to group all of these together. So when you're ending it, it looks somewhat like, step 2, where you've got, you probably a lot more groups than that, but 10 groups or something of Post-it notes under the bottlenecks and problems, which is an internal thing, and opportunities for growth, which is an external thing. You probably got a half dozen, groups there as well. So again, this is about getting all the ideas on the table and making sure that everybody in the room has understood what everybody else is saying to the fullest extent you can what's on a Post-it note. So that's 2. 3 is to go through there and for each group now, you've got these things organized into groups, rewrite and consolidate that group down to a single Post-it note. So, and you're rewriting, don't lose the old Post-it notes. I mean, get lots of pictures of this process as you go through. Trust me, you'll use it. And rewrite, but you're rewriting down, and so now you've got maybe 15 Post-it notes that are remaining, that are really clearly describing what's in each group. Obviously open it up to talking at this point in time, but get everybody there. Everybody's got to be really aligned about these 15, because everything else is based on this. So whatever it is, doesn't have to be 15, might be 5, might be 20. But make sure that there's clarity within those notes. So now we get to the fun part. Any comments here on the rewrite part, Sue, or you? Yeah. Oh, pick somebody with neat handwriting.
Yeah, somebody with neat handwriting.
Yeah, not me.
Somebody with neat handwriting, and that they look for whatever that one Post-it is, that they are as clear as they can possibly be for something that if you read 3 weeks later, it would still mean the same thing, right? So looking for clarity of those words.
Right. And ask some questions at this point in time, as as a facilitator, ask some questions at this time. And this is something, going to make this is a process. Once you've done it internally a few times, you can definitely do it. There's no reason not to do it internally. There is some value of having an experienced third-party facilitator walk the team through it. Because then everybody can participate. So nobody's trying to facilitate the thing while they're trying to, they can just really play in the game, so to speak, or back up and watch the entire team. So there's a lot of value of an experienced third-party facilitator. But, ask probing questions. So you can only fit so many words on a Post-it note, but ask the questions of the team and ask different team members to really explain it and articulate it, get to the why and everything. Again, this is an alignment exercise. This is alignment brainstorming exercise. So now move them over, arrange them in a circle around the board, and then this is where you're looking for what drives what. So and start drawing lines between, okay, this thing drives that thing. For instance, like submittal approval drives procurement. We can't be buying stuff if we don't have submittal approval. And so submittals come after spec review, right? So like if those were items that you put up on the board, for instance, you would be drawing the connectors between them of like what drives what. And this is just one look at it. There is no decisions at this point. This is just logic of going, well, that Post-it, that thing, has, drives 3 other things. So at least that, and that may be valid or not valid. If it drives 3 other things that are each $100 issues, that's not that big of a deal. But if it drives 3 other pretty major things, then let's focus on that thing, because that's a gating item. Okay, make another copy of the Post-it notes. So rewrite them, rewrite a whole nother set, leave that diagram up on the board, rewrite another set of the Post-it notes. Again, testing out the wording, ask a few more questions for clarification. And that's, we will do some nudging at this point in time. Like if there's things that we see to get it out, another one on the playing field or something, well, we'll be nudging people along a little bit, but rewrite. And then now rank these for business impact. Just, basically the income side of this thing. Like, okay, this is worth $1 million over 3 years. This is worth $500,000 over a year. And so just rank them, highest to lowest. Talk through the why. This is an exercise to go do to get to the teams to, physically, they're reordering them. They're talking to each other. They're having discussions. You're listening to that discussion. More important to listen to the discussion and the who and how the teams interact. Is there a person sitting in the back with their arms crossed, with a bad look on their face? What's really happening here? That's what you're looking for as they're going through this exercise. If the team happens to have, like, this is where Sue's always great, if the team happens to have taken, like, say, the Clifton Strengths ahead of time, like, she's putting her psychology degree to work and marking up stuff and making notes and all those things, right? She's like usually like super silent in the back of the room, but then, but watching all of these observations going on, make sure that that's happening. Super, super value add, because that's what you're looking for here. Anything on this?
Well, and that's
or?
just mentioning the Clifton Strengths. That's where you start to see when we're force ranking things like this. You can see sometimes people that are maybe more project driven, right? They're being brought into this discussion, but more project driven, and you've got others that are more organizationally driven. You can start to see where maybe the project driven people are sitting in the back because they don't necessarily think about things this way. And David mentioned it earlier, right? So, the bigger decision makers in the organization, a lot of times you want to get them to take a back seat, have them be a scribe, have them do something that is not necessarily right in the middle of some of this, because you want to give everybody an opportunity to come to the forefront and express their opinions, right? So you do see a lot of that when you're just standing observing the participants, not just the force ranking, but how the participants are working through all of that discussion and debate.
Yeah, and including how they
Absolutely.
pragmatically quantify these things. I mean, you can't come up with this perfect estimate for a lot of things, but what are the 2 or 3 factors and assumptions that they brought into the mix, and how did they think about it, and how did everybody else agree to it? And it's really neat watching this process happen. You'll see. I saw that on Thursday, and we're having a conversation about what's the role of a senior project manager. And we were talking about approval limits on change orders and something. And there's somebody in the room that has been through this so many times, and they just automatically started bringing it up and calling out metrics of like, okay, we have this many, about this many per year last year that we're over this amount, And so you can start to get an idea of what the workflow, because if you say like, I want them to look at every single change order, well, that's not going to happen, probably. Or I mean, it might, but it might be that point of diminishing returns. And so it's really important to kind of know the cutoffs, like how many changes were over 100,000, how many were over 150,000, and so on and so forth. So that's again, what the behavior you're looking for, but and you're trying to call that out in people. And so that's where, as a facilitator, ask like, hey, can you look that up? Can you do this? Can you do that? So there's a lot that goes into this piece. So back to rewrite, pick another facilitator. Tighten up the wording a little bit, ask a few more questions of the team to have them articulate what was in an item and why, and then go back and rank these things from control, highest to lowest. And control meaning, like I went out for a run this morning and it was pouring down rain. I had zero control over it. Yesterday it was super sunshiny and everything like that. Got very, very lucky. There was exactly a 1 hour break in the rain. Got our mileage in. But I'm laughing at that. But rain, weather is a huge impact on a construction schedule. How much control do I have over it? Not much. To the degree that maybe I could choose what my start time was, or like when how I phased out a project to probability shift when there might be certain rain days or something like that. But there's no way not in control of the weather. As soon as you think you are, it's going to let you know that you're not. And so you're really putting it, because this factors into your risk, your probability of being able to change the outcome on that and everything. And so if if it's an issue where you need the customer to act perfectly 100% of the time, and that's the only way that the math works on your prioritization,
Yeah.
just kill that one. That moved to the kill category. So arrange it, have the discussion, get into the why, ask questions. Now what's interesting in that is a lot of time as a contractor is navigating stages of growth at say, whatever, at stage 3 or something, they're going to say that's a no control issue. And at stage 5, that contractor's looking at that and said, yeah, we have 100% control over that. And so that's, that's where you want to challenge people. And it's okay. Both of them are actually right from where they're at. But the problem is if that stage 3 contractor starts to grow and they maintain that mentality and they maintain that culture, they're leaving a lot on the table because they're not trying to take control of something that actually is a controllable item. So it's really kind of an interesting. I was watching two guys argue out in a bar, right? Of course, it's going to be two guys arguing it out in a bar, right? That's just how that happens. But yeah, they're arguing out, and one was he was very big on schedule control, and the other one was like, that's out of my control. The owner, the weather, the this, the that. There was 100 reasons. Equal size contractor, and it's so interesting. Their outcomes are dramatically different because one has the thought that he can control lots of elements of the schedule. And they go through there and they do control lots of elements of the schedule. The other one said, I have to react to the schedule. So this is one where belief and mindset changes all kinds of things. And I would put both of them on at equal intelligence, equal drive, but they have two different belief systems. And it's a very weird thing. And I actually know, how they both got their different belief systems. And then belief systems are hard to change. So anyways, control's one. Any thoughts or anything, or move to the next?
I just laugh because everybody, the next one we go to is the one where everybody really wants to kind of start. So, just because it's.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, well, good intro into it. Yes. So the last thing that we're going to really talk about is what does it cost to do these things? Because it doesn't matter what it costs, it's what's the return, what's our level of control, and all those things. Yeah, what it cost. And yeah, I actually just heard this yesterday at breakfast of going, well, this software costs this and this software costs that. And I'm like, that's probably not how I'd be making that decision. I would say, what's the work that I need done? They're within $100,000. What's the work that I need done? And let's go talk through that. I mean, that's just, the cost is not how I would evaluate those two, unless the checkboxes come up exactly equal, but that's never the case. So yeah, the very last one is like, what's it going to cost over what period of time? Rewrite, pick a different facilitator, ask some new questions, and check it out. So I think that's that one. Then the very last one is going, okay, now let's get to our confidence rating here, right? Of going, we got a pretty good, cost estimate. We got a pretty good return estimate. We got we've talked about our controls. We've talked about that. Let's just be really honest with ourselves, given our capabilities and our track record and the past and all those things. What's our risk of coming up with a goose egg, to 100% failure? What's our risk of partial completion? It's only 50%. We only achieve 50% of the returns. What's our risk of time delay? It took us 4 years, not 2 years. Our risk of additional cost, it cost us $400,000, not $200,000. So really talking through those things, and you can make notes off to the side. That's why you're rewriting the Post-it notes there. And usually it ends up that there's 5-6 Post-it notes off, and there's writing on the, butcher paper and stuff behind it. And that's why it's important to have lots of room in the room as you're going through it. But really rank those from, highest execution risk to like, nope, that's in the bag, guarantee we're going to get that done. And so anyways, what do you see here, Sue? Because this is usually the one that has the biggest variable. Back to everybody's an optimist, so of course we're going to get it all 100%
well,
done.
and I'd go back to just looking through all of these, right? Where there's a reason you start with the impact to the business, and then there's a reason why you go to control and why cost is number 3. Just like you were saying, right? Just because a software program is cheaper than another software program doesn't mean it's going to have the same impact on the job. or on the company. It doesn't mean you're going to have the same type
Right.
of in that case maybe control of data that you're collecting, all of that. So the cost is a lot less of an issue really once you've done the others. But I think doing them in the order of, impact to the organization, the control that we have, the costs that we have associated with that, even though we are eternal optimists, and that's why I think when we get back to the P.I.C. method, maybe for contractors it ought to be the P.I.C. method, where we believe everything is possible and we can implement it all. So we don't really go to the C and the K very often. We might think it's challenging.
You mean like Ed talked about it? It's the
Yeah,
go
it's
or the
go or no
go-go
go, and that's
process.
it, right? There's two, one side of the line or the other. So we like the one side where it's possible or we can implement. So we like the pie as opposed to the pick. But I think taking them in order and actually taking the group through that order helps them to get to that mind shift of the risk, right? Because we've looked financially at the impact. We've looked at what we can and cannot control. We've looked at what it's going to cost as an outlay of cash. Now, when you start looking at that risk, they've got those things in mind. And I think, if nothing else, it helps us to get a bit more into the full concept of the pick and not just living in pie the whole time. So I think the order of this is important because it does help get our heads better aligned for the risk factors that we need to talk about.
I like that, the pie. So, okay, that's cool. I'm going to take that one away. So pie instead of pick, and then Ed is, well, we had the go process and we had the go-go process.
Yeah,
We had to
yeah,
get the no-go
yeah.
process in there. So, okay, no, that, yeah, super valid. And that is exactly why it's important to take the team through things in this order. Oh, and by the way, there's a high
Yeah,
cognitive load to going and doing this. So don't hesitate to break this up into
yeah.
a couple different sessions, over time. There is a very high cognitive load to going and doing this because there's a lot of discussion. So don't hesitate to break it up midday, take people out for a few hours to go have some fun, clear the cobwebs out of the brain and everything. But this is where you're really developing people and their ability to think. And so again, in a stage 6 type of company, you're going to have a half dozen people that do this complexity in their heads almost instantaneously. Toyota described it, like that they had about 40 of those people in Toyota. So think about a company the size of Toyota that could go walk into an operation and they could identify the problems and move to an action plan in 2 minutes, and they had 40 of those. And the next tier down, it took them 2 months to go work through, the system to do that. And the next tier down, it took them 2 years to be able to identify it. So that's kind of like, so in your world, that the field engineer that's out there learning, doing the math, studying it, doing the time study, writing everything down very, very manually. Yeah, it's going to take them a couple of years to come to some of those conclusions. But you need your area managers to be able to come to that conclusion almost instantaneously, because it's a live fire
That's right.
exercise at that point. So, okay, so we're there, and with that information, now the pick starts to make a little bit more sense. Like, that's now all of the context around there that the team can come over and force fit everything in there. And like Sue said, force rank these things so that everything doesn't fall into pie. Force rank these across both axes, right? Force rank them down return and force rank them across execution, so you have an even distribution curve. You might not like what ends up in the kill category, and that's fine. Just don't think about it as like we're going to kill it forever. We're just going to, we may kill it for now, but we might come back to it later. Focus on the implement, stage. Let's get those assigned out to action items, and then let's dive a whole lot deeper on the challenge stages, because those are going to be our bigger bets, our bigger risks and everything. And that's, as a leader, where you should be spending your time. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. What do you think, Sue? Man, I mean, there's a lot when you actually think about the basics of prioritization,
There
right?
are, because usually you just look at again a stage 1 contractor. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Yeah, it starts to get much more complex when you've got
Right, but that's because that stage one contractor, he or she, and usually it's a he and a she, it's a team. They bet everything, like
Yes.
their house, their
Yep.
car, their firstborn. They bet everything on starting this business, and so they do have, and because of the scale of it, and because of what's at risk, they do have a great amount of situational awareness around it. It's just that dramatically changes as things get big enough, and you realize like I don't even have enough time to open up every change order
Right.
log in the company. Like that's a big turning point when you say, how do I actually manage that and make sure that works? When you're like, I don't even have enough time in a day to just open up and look
Yep.
at every change order log,
Yeah.
much less know what's in there. Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of scary, right? So so you got to, systems change as you grow. So now we've got to take what these things are. This is the pick smart part. So the SMART is an acronym for make it specific. What are we going to go do? Make it measurable. What is it? What does it look like when we're done? What does it look like now? What's it going to look like in the future state when we're done, so that we can actually tell what done looks like? Remembering that there is a degree of done, like Sue, like you talked about. There's done doesn't look like 100%. So get really clear on what done looks like, because it might be that as you take this process of going from
Right.
stage 3 to 4, you just take it to this level. And as you go from stage 4 to 5, you take it up another level. It's still the same thing, but you're now taking it from 80% to 95% as you go up and as you change in stages of company. So it may be the same exact thing, just different degree of done. So make sure it's measurable. Is it achievable? This is where we, hey, given our capabilities, our capacity, can we actually do it? Hope is not a strategy. Desire doesn't create capabilities or capacity. I mean, it's a prerequisite, but it doesn't. Is it relevant? Like, does this really align? Which hopefully the entire process we just went through ensures that it's relevant. Hopefully it's not in the pie category. It's over in the, look at the whole board and everything. We really did it. And then who's responsible? Who's gonna get this thing done? Not that's not the total person. For something this big, there's gonna be lots of other people involved. But who's spearheading this thing? You can't lead by committee, so to speak. There can be some guidance committees. There can be that, and there's gonna be a lot of people involved. But there's got to be a who that is attached to, like, okay, if this thing isn't right, who? And you're not looking for a throat to choke.
Right.
You're just like getting some clarity on who. And then time bound, when are we going to do it? So your SMART goal will look something like, move this thing from X to Y by this date, and because of, and outline what the rationale is, because it's important, because that helps other people really understand it. And a lot of times try and tie it to how will it impact our scoreboard or our strategy, and it should impact both our scoreboard and our strategy. So that's the SMART part. So pick SMART. There's the group exercise. We'll be wrapping up here, and we got 2 or 3 more things to cover, and then we'll be wrapping this up. So what do you think, Sue? Anything to add to pick SMART?
Just to emphasize that again, what you've measured and what's achievable at one level, you may measure the same, but is achievable at a different, achievable at a different rate at a different level, or you just may even measure it differently while you're looking at achieving it. So none of these stay the same. As as people grow, as your organization grows, all of that, they will continue to need to be modified. Just going back and saying, okay, what do I want to move from here to here, by when and why? So always make sure you're looking at the level that you're at for the right SMART goals.
Which brings us perfectly to growth changes the return curves and priorities. So from starting up through sustainable, some things get much, much better with scale. So some things you might have invested in at stage 2 or stage 3, and they are barely paying back. But when you get to the cycle times, by the time you get to stage 4, like payroll is one of them. Timekeeping is definitely one of those that invest earlier in your timekeeping systems, because if you're planning to grow, because with scale, timekeeping does not get
Yeah.
better. So, and just gonna throw that out there. It just does not get better. And then some things have diseconomies of scale, that if you have a certain process that's working now, and you scale up that process, it gets substantially worse. And so the return, the return on it goes from being a return to a cost. And so just know where you're at. That's the same for your processes that we're talking about. That's also the same for your leadership, which we talked about with stages of growth, and that your leadership needs to change as you move through each stage of growth. Your leadership focus needs to change. Marshall Goldsmith wrote a great book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There, and he's got, I think, 21 different categories of things that we do as leaders that were super valuable at this stage. Like I said, like for me, it was like building a project. I learned really pretty early on that high attention to detail, getting everything right, and having a perfect punch list, being punched as I go, so that there wasn't a punch list coming from the owner or the architect or engineers, was a really successful trait. So then I move into the business management side of things, and of course I got even less training moving to the business management side of things than I got moving into the field leadership side of things, because our industry is phenomenal at training. This is not a negative thing. I love everything about my career and my boss and everything like that. I'm laughing about it because that's just the state of the industry, right? But so I have less, and so now I'm actually trying to run my business unit that I'm accountable for and responsible for. I'm trying to run it like a project. So I'm staying late every single night, and I am literally writing up punch list items of stuff to go do. Thank goodness it's like most of my people liked me. So because that first couple of years was probably really, really rough until I legit realized, like, okay, you just can't get it all done. So I think all of us learn through School of Hard Knocks, and say, if you can just shorten up that learning curve a little bit, it has a pretty dramatic impact on your people within your company. Because it was what I was doing is I was over stressing myself and over stressing my team, and not necessarily producing any better returns than if I had just backed up and said, okay, what can we reasonably do? What are the priorities? Which that's an important thing, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So economies of scale, diseconomies of scale, be aware. Which also is like, they call these your growth cycles and decision points. Again, we talked about this with the stages of growth. But when you're growing, you go through these different stages, and they're all pretty defined stages. And kind of a good self-evaluation is sometimes you need to keep going forward. You need to double down on what you were doing yesterday, right? Like my running is an example. I just need to do it more. No big deal. I don't need to change anything. I don't need new shoes. I don't need to do anything. I actually just need to do it more. Great. That's the answer sometimes. Other times the answer is I need to make a pretty dramatic change. I mean, think about a Tiger Woods who had to change his stroke in order to get better, continue to get better. And that's a really hard thing to do for a golfer. I would suggest that it's much, much harder to do for a business. Honestly, this is what we do, so I don't know quite how much to describe here.
Yeah, well, it's hard, and it's usually the hardest, or feels the hardest, when it's got all the people involved, right? Tiger Woods changing his stroke, yes, that was him deciding to do that for something for himself. As organizations continue to grow, somebody you put, if you're the president and you put somebody in a role, and now you're finding out as the organization's growing that person's just no longer, that role's just not right for them anymore. The role has outgrown that person, or you put a person in a role and now they're literally kind of halting the growth of the organization because they're in. So those are the real decision points in those really painful growth cycles when, no fault of anyone's, just as things grow, people have to move around so they can be successful in all of their opportunities as well. And that's probably one of the most painful ones, though. At least for me, it always has been.
Yeah, and then when you're deciding on, as a leader, you're deciding on a few things. You're deciding on your growth trajectory.
Yeah.
Should we keep growing at this rate? Should we accelerate the growth? Should we slow down the growth? Should we even retract? What should we do? You're deciding on market strategies. Is this is this strategy still the right strategy for where we want to go in the future? Is this market still a highly valuable viable market, or has it turned into a commodity? Because every market, for any type of services provided to that market goes from it's an emerging market and people are going, should I even get into that market or not, to okay, it's this booming market and it's exploding. Think about telecom circa late 80s, early 2000s. That was a booming period of time for telecom, and then it starts to move into a commoditization stage where you're pretty much ground down to almost zero margins and taking on all the risks, taking 90-day payment terms and all of those things, and for almost no margin. And so you got to decide on where you're going to be in that market. Your org structure has to, may have to change and adjust. Like Sue just said, like the people may not, it just may be that they belong in different roles, or you need roles that you never needed yesterday. I was talking to a general superintendent yesterday, and it's like, did you ever think that, when you started out, that all of a sudden you were going to have like a quality control, a quality superintendent and, and safety, director of safety reporting to you, when you're an apprentice? And, no, most of us didn't think that way when we started out. Your management systems change, your leadership focus changes. And so kind of a good self-evaluation, and this checklist, it's on our website, but, is there high stress on the team leading to high turnover? Everybody, construction's stressful. So we're not talking about like you're at peak, of the summer and projects, you got one bad project and the team's stressed. We're talking continual sustained stress, that's your normal, and then it starts to lead to higher turnover, especially in key positions. Your systems are breaking down. You find yourself, on whatever system. It might be your design software or whatever it is, that those are just breaking down, or there's too many missed handoffs on, say, purchasing of materials. You start to see an increase in safety incidents. Hopefully you're monitoring your near misses, so you're not monitoring the safety things reactively, when the milk is already spilt, so to speak. You start to see it creep up in the incidents, or the near misses ahead of time. You have increased amounts of rework, which will show up as, you may not be tracking it, but you're going to hear about it anecdotally. You're going to see it in material overruns. You're going to see it in labor hour overruns. Inconsistent profitability. It may not be, and it's going to show up first usually at the project level, and it may not show up all at once, but it will start to show up. You'll have a few jobs do bad and a few jobs do good and a few jobs, and so you start to get this higher variability on your WIP statement, and then that bleeds through, and you have good years and bad years as a company. That, by the way, that's not totally normal. I mean, it's normal enough that people say that it's normal. No, it doesn't actually have to be normal. You have decreased cash flow. You have more, increased customer complaints or lower customer satisfaction. Customers that you thought were always in the bag, that they were always coming to you, now, start to entertain a couple other competitors or something like that. You have inconsistent growth. So it's kind of the self-evaluation categories to really start with, to say, am I at a growth inflection point? And it's a hard leadership decision to say, is it because I'm not being disciplined and doubling down on the things that I should be doing at this stage of growth, or is it because I've outgrown those tools and those systems, right? That's a really, really hard thing. If I say on the running thing, if I haven't run for 6 months, I don't need a new pair of shoes. I actually just need to keep running. Which kind of brings us, kind of full circle to the end, and where we started. You can't run your business like it's a project, but there's like kind of always this in between. And so as your kind of career progresses from, say, a PM role to the CEO, you go from prioritizing how to get it all done. You need to manage all these projects. They've got completion dates. They've got, all these requirements, and your magic as a PM, as a superintendent, and, really a lot of the roles, accounting, you have to figure out how to get all of these things done in a certain time frame. And as you move to the CEO, a chunk of it starts to become prioritizing what should be done. And very importantly, what shouldn't be done, and communicating that super, super clearly to the team of what we're not going to do, and being absolutely that clear, like, we will not do this. that's a hard transition to make, and it's not like this step that goes from 0% to 100%, right? It's this progression throughout your career, and that's a lot of what Marshall Goldsmith talks about, and what got you here won't get you there, and it's always a balance, and it's really really hard to go do, and it's not always obvious, when you should apply one method or the other method. So anyways, that's I think that's about it. The last thing I want to talk through, well, I guess actually, Sue, on this one, how have you seen this in your career? I mean, you've seen a lot. So how have you seen this changing prioritization?
Yeah, it's probably the most interesting progression of this is watching when, again, in my experience, I've seen people come up through the ranks. Everybody that wants to be CEO just realize that 99.9% of the others are going to be disappointed because there's only one CEO, right? But when you've got a good management in place or good leadership in place, or I should just say leadership in place, and you start to see where you've got, again, in this model, you've got a bunch of good PMs and you've got a CEO and a leadership team that really kind of sees what's going on. If you tend to be that hollow in the middle, right, where maybe there's not enough leadership between the high end and your PMs, you start to see where the PMs are being, I'm going to use the word coerced, whether that's correct or not, but being asked to move up into things that maybe they're not ready for yet. David and I laugh. There's a situation that I've known that I knew a guy for a long time, right? Great foreman could work his crew up into a frenzy, man. They made money every single shift. So they moved him up into, in my world, into a field superintendent. So he was working with several foremen. And he could motivate a field crew like you would not believe. So made a bunch of money there. Well, then they moved him up into being a job superintendent, which was, you superintendent or maybe first-time project manager, right? A lesser complex job, not a tough owner kind of thing. And so we move this person into there, and they're doing okay, but again, they're getting farther and farther away from the love of the field and the things that they do, and being actually moved more towards these management type positions. And next thing still doing okay. So move up into a larger project management position. And now you start to see, kind of the wheels on the bus start to fall off. And a lot of that's just, moving people too fast out of their career progression into a trajectory that's just not right for how they want to manage the work, how they want to live, where they can be successful. Their level of prioritization tends to remain at the field level, and a lot of times we want to push career progression with those modes of prioritization, and sometimes just asking people what they want to do does a lot more for getting people in that balanced mode than pushing them to the outer edges of maybe a mode that they're just not comfortable in. They're not going to do very good work there because it's not where they want to live. So I've seen it work really, really well with some mentoring and coaching. And then I've seen it work really poorly with that. Here's the carrot, right? It's more money. It's all these great things. And then, the person just kind of has they just kind of fall apart, really not any fault of their own. So it's good to know how this works and really pay attention on an individual basis.
Which that brings us back to the developing talent. And I mean, and this is exactly what you just talked about. And unfortunately, in that scenario, they lost a good person, and probably honestly took some years off of his life. I mean, he was paid well, but took some years off of his life because he was running at a stress level that he shouldn't have been running at because he was out of his operating range. I mean, it's just like taking a piece of equipment out of your operating range. But so when you're kind of running through this, and this is back to the talent value stream of planning your talent, needs, recruit to hire. That's a really important process. Get them on board and get them into the role where they're being productive in the role they were hired for. So those first three stages are pretty, they happen pretty quickly, and they're pretty, they're very critical. But the bulk of it is like this whole middle part of the retention and development piece. And a lot of these exercises, like we just talked about, it's a lot cheaper and a lot more effective to go watch a person like you just talked about, to watch them struggle in a posted exercise that has no consequences, right? That posted exercise is over whenever the bell rings, 3 p.m. or whatever. It's a lot better to be able to back up and watch them, struggle there or massively succeed there, and then be able to help plan, what's best for their development, what's best for their next career path and everything like that, and have those hard conversations with them. So a lot of, and as we get into the next session after this, we're going to talk about the job roles and getting really specific about the job roles and trying to keep these things together. But just consider that you are developing talent and you are evaluating talent while you are improving, making improvements to the machine, so to speak. You're making improvements to the people. So anyways, you're waiting to see like who's really good at, identifying improvements to make in their area. Who's really good at the fill or kill? Who's really good at 5S? Who's good at motivating the team to keep everybody moving forward? Who's, you're looking for all of these different people, and then you're thinking about the organization you're going to create in the future, and that's essentially what you're building with this. So, does that summarize it decently?
Yeah, no,
what you
I
just
think
described?
I think that was well said. And really, it's remembering that to keep people, right? You got to find out why they stay. You got to find out what makes them tick. You have to know, yeah, just like the things David was saying, what they're, who's good at the 5S, who's good at, all of these different pieces. And then looking at developing those people, there's kind of three pieces to that. One is there's training, and training is the technical stuff people need. Every time there's a new piece of technology, everybody needs to be trained. Your CEO needs to be trained on how to use the new iPhone, right? Whatever that is. So there's training, which everybody needs. Then there's professional development, right? Who are those people that want to get really super good at what they're already doing, because that's where they want to be. That's where they bring their value to the organization. And then who are those people that want to look, maybe again, get their, kind of raise their head a little bit more and go, you know what, I would like to lead this organization and its people into the next, the next level, the next generation. And that's the leadership development, right? Where we're helping people not just inside these exercises and all that, but to really sit back and look at the bigger picture. Some will want to learn about it and go, oh, that is so not for me. And others will want to learn about it and go, let's go, right? So all of that retention is about that continued, really continuous improvement of developing people, and how you can watch them, learn from them, see where they really shine, and help them to really continue to shine inside the organization through many types of developing and aligning of roles.
Which then brings us to our kind of last little piece on prioritizing talent development, is this planning stage of going, here's our current state, here's our people. And when we talk about capabilities and, outside and capacity, I mean, outside of some of those big things like we talked about, a major equipment purchase and stuff, that's actually, even though it's a big dollar thing, it's a lot easier, because like once you buy that piece of equipment, it's going to do the thing that we want it to do. It's got its specs, it's got all those things. So once that decision's made or not made, it's there. People have a lot longer runway on them. And they will may leave the company, they may leave a role because they got promoted, because of a retirement, because of turnover, recruitment. So it's really hot market out there. Sometimes just awesome opportunities come along. There's all kinds of things that are going to happen. So you got to sit there and say, where's my current state of my organization, and where am I going to be in the future over a period of time, and really back up and look at all of those different categories and start mapping that out. That's really what goes into the planning stage. And again, when you're at stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, planning for talent looks a lot like, what do I need to do to staff this job this week? this month, the next 6 months. I'm not saying it's that short of a, time horizon, but it's a pretty narrow thing. And it's usually about like, what do I need to staff this? Or like, they're getting overloaded in, accounting. I need to add a person here, or purchasing or something. You start to get up and do, the larger, contractor stage 4, stage 5, stage 6, you're starting to look out quite a ways and starting to say, okay, I need to hire 10 field engineers because, every year, just like clockwork, because, 8 of them are going to stay and one of them will make it up to, an ops manager role over a 15-year period of time. And I just know that that's how I'm going to continue to staff from there, and I'm planning on my growth. So that's a lot of what we're going to get into next. It's a lot of what we cover with the talent value stream, roadmap development and all those things. But any comments here, or should we wrap up and let people know what's coming next? And,
I think we let them know what's coming next.
Okay, yeah, we've been at this coffee conversation for a while, but there was a lot more here than when we kind of outlined and said we're going to talk about prioritization basics. There ended up being a lot more here on prioritization basics when you think about the talent, both the what needs to be done and the systems and then the talent. Yeah, there was a lot more. So coming up next, we're going to talk about creating job role clarity through really good job descriptions, and not just job descriptions that are kind of the recruitment marketing side, but job descriptions that you can manage, you can train to, you can develop people for future roles, you can go through there and measure them really effectively, you can evaluate them to be able to give people feedback and things like that. So that's what's coming up next. And then right after that, we're going to cover some of the basics on strategy and how to work through both strategic decisions at the board and the higher C-level, as well as strategic alignment, because those are two very, very different things. Like getting the team aligned around what needs to be done, and functional level strategies are very, very different than company level strategies. So we're going to talk through all those different levels. So that's what's coming up next. And yeah, as always, Sue, I'm loving. I love having the coffee conversations.
Well,
with
we may have to move this to happy hour conversations eventually.
Yeah, we've talked about that, but I'm not. Well, I guess we're gonna have to try and see. All right, cool. I will see you momentarily.
Building projects requires technical expertise and resources. Building a construction business is about developing and aligning those capabilities with customers. We exist to help contractors build stronger businesses for the next generation. From startup to sustainability, contractors grow through 6 distinct stages. Each stage of growth requires a different leadership focus, strategies, systems, and structure. Our goal is to broadly share information that helps contractors navigate each stage. Any resources discussed are available on our website at dbmteam.com.